Amy and I were married 15 years ago. We'd been inseparable almost from the start, dating exclusively for 3 years after we first met at a college party. My name is Mark Butler. I was a junior at the time, and Amy, a sophomore, was like a breath of fresh air. Smart, funny, beautiful. We connected instantly. We spent the next 2 years together until I graduated, and then we did long distance for her senior year. The plan was always to get married once she finished school. 6 months into our marriage, we attended a barbecue with a few couples around our age. The steaks were sizzling, the drinks were flowing, and by the end of the night, only a few of us were left, sitting around a fire pit, talking and laughing. As the conversation drifted from one topic to another, someone brought up the idea of a celebrity hall pass. "What's a celebrity hall pass?" I asked, genuinely curious. Sadie, a petite blonde sitting next to me, piped up. "It's just a game where you pick a celebrity you'd hypothetically be allowed to be with. Just for fun, of course." I laughed, feeling a little relieved it was just a game. "So it's just for laughs?" "Yes and no," Sadie replied, patting her husband's knee with a smile. "Tom and I have agreed that each of us gets one hall pass. It doesn't have to be a celebrity either." I was shocked. "Are you serious? You mean either of you could be with someone else just like that?" Tom grinned at me, clearly amused by my reaction. "Pretty much. It's a bit more complicated, but that's the gist of it." He nodded toward the other two couples. "They have the same agreement." Katie, one of the wives, lowered her head, looking a little embarrassed. "Tom, you don't need to tell everyone." Tom laughed. "Katie, you used your hall pass, right?" Katie hesitated, then nodded almost sheepishly. "I was at a conference, and this guy I met had just lost his wife in a car accident. I told Carl I'd be using my hall pass to be there for him." I looked over at Carl, who seemed relaxed, like this was nothing out of the ordinary. "You were okay with that, Carl?" I asked. "Oh, yeah," Carl replied with a shrug. "She came home to me, and I'll get to use my hall pass someday, too." As they all continued talking, sharing who their hypothetical celebrity choices would be, Amy encouraged me to join in. I vaguely remember choosing someone after Amy announced her choice, but what stands out most was the intimacy we shared that night after we got home. She even admitted, in the heat of the moment, that she was picturing her celebrity crush. The next morning, I made it very clear that I would never agree to a real hall pass. To me, it was just a game, nothing more. Amy agreed, and we moved on. Time passed, and life kept us busy. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and our days were filled with parenting and work. We stayed in touch with Sadie and Tom for a few years, but that faded after they divorced, along with the other 2 couples from that night. I happened to run into Tom at a bar a few years later, and over a couple of beers, he filled me in on the details. He said the hall pass agreements had been the root cause of each divorce. They'd all thought it would add some excitement, but the reality was far different. Suspicion and resentment crept in, and eventually everything unraveled. Tom's story confirmed my gut feeling from that night. I'd always known it was a dangerous idea, a fantasy that couldn't survive in the real world. I'd intended to tell Amy about my conversation with Tom, but with our hectic schedules, I never found the right moment. Now I wish I had. It was a Thursday night, and Amy was away at a conference in Los Angeles. At about midnight, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from her. I could tell right away that she was in a noisy place, and from the sound of her voice, she'd been drinking. "You're not going to believe it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We met Joshua from my favorite soap. He actually likes me, Mark, and I'm going to use my hall pass." The noise on her end grew louder, making it hard to hear. "What did you say? Did you say something about a hall pass?" "Yes. Honey, I knew you'd understand. See you Saturday." "What? Amy, are you serious? Can you hear me?" I shouted into the phone, but the call had already ended. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. I left her several messages, warning her not to do anything she'd regret, to remember what this would do to us. When I didn't hear back, I sent her a few texts, spelling out that there would be consequences if she broke our vows. Friday dragged on painfully, my mind consumed with thoughts of what might be happening in Los Angeles. When I finished work, I took our kids to my parents' house, not wanting them to sense anything was wrong. Once they were settled, I drove over to Jack's house. Jack's wife, Jenny, had gone on the trip with Amy. They were co-workers and good friends. I was desperate for answers. Jack met me at the door, looking surprised to see me. "Mark, everything okay?" "Not exactly. I haven't been able to reach Amy. She called me last night and something felt off. Can you call Jenny and see if she knows anything?" Jack nodded, though he looked uncertain. "Sure, but do you want me to tell her you're here?" "No," I said quickly. "Just call her casually. I don't want her to know I'm worried." "I'm afraid Amy might have asked her to keep quiet." Jack agreed, and while he dialed, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, wanting a record of whatever he found out. Jenny picked up almost immediately, and her cheerful tone clashed with the tension I felt. "Hi, honey. You must have ESP. I just got back to my room from the classes. We have that dinner tonight, and then I'll see you tomorrow," she said. They chatted briefly about the conference, and then Jack brought up Amy. "Have you seen much of Amy?" "Mark left me a message asking if I'd talk to you about her." Jenny paused. "Don't tell him we talked, Jack. The last I saw of her was last night. We were drinking when a soap star, Joshua, you know the one Amy's crazy about, came over to our table. Amy got his autograph and they danced a few times. She mentioned something about a hall pass and he was all for it. I tried to talk her out of it, but she said it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. She whispered to me that she was going to go with him. Next thing I knew, they were walking out of the club arm in arm. But Jack, don't tell Mark. Please." Jack ended the call, looking at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Mark. Do you two have an agreement like that?" "No," I said firmly. "Years ago, we played a silly game, but I made it clear I would never be okay with it in reality. What am I going to do?" Jack just shook his head. "I don't know, but it sounds like it won't be easy." On the way home, I stopped by my parents' house again, asking my mom if the kids could stay for the weekend. She looked concerned, sensing something was wrong, but I brushed it off. I told her I just needed a bit of time to myself. Back at the house, I tried calling and texting Amy again, but got nothing in response. I assumed she had her phone off, choosing to ignore me. Amy's flight was due in the next afternoon. Jenny was supposed to get a ride home with her, so I asked Jack to text me when they arrived, hoping I'd have enough time to prepare myself. I set up a video camera on a shelf in the living room, wanting to capture whatever she would say. This was a moment of truth, and I needed it documented. The garage door rumbled open, and I felt a surge of tension as I hit the record button on the camera remote hidden under my leg. I could hear Amy coming in from the kitchen, her voice cheerful as she dragged her bag inside. "Oh my God, what a crazy trip," she said, her tone bright and excited. I looked at her, forcing myself to stay calm. "Yeah, I bet. I've been trying to call you." She waved it off casually. "Oh, my phone broke. I dropped it and the screen just shattered." Keeping my voice steady, I said, "The last time we talked, it sounded like you were in a club. You mentioned something about meeting that soap star and using your hall pass." Amy laughed, not sensing the weight of my words. "Oh, yeah. We were at this club, and Joshua Morrow came over to our table. You know, the star from my favorite soap. We danced, talked a bit about that hall pass game we joked about years ago. He's so good-looking, and he actually wanted me to go back with him. That's why I called. I thought you'd understand." She paused, looking a little too giddy as she continued. "He's been with all those actresses, and he picked me. Can you believe it? He took me to his place, and, well, I'm sure you don't want all the details." I felt my jaw clench, but I forced myself to stay still. "No, I do. Tell me how this actor seduced my wife, how he made her forget about her marriage." Amy's excitement faded a bit, replaced by a look of mild confusion, but she shrugged it off. "Well, if you insist. He was incredible, honestly. So much experience. I mean, those rumors about these stars being good are no joke. He was everything you'd expect." As she continued her story, her face lit up and I could hardly believe it. She hadn't even noticed the anger that must have been obvious on my face. Finally, she paused, catching on. "Mark, are you all right?" she asked, a hint of concern crossing her expression. "No," I replied, struggling to keep my voice level. "My wife is standing here in our living room, confessing to being with another man, and she's practically beaming about it." Amy looked at me, genuinely puzzled. "It was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, Mark. Joshua was my hall pass. I thought you'd be happy for me. I got to live out a dream." "A dream?" I replied, feeling the anger rise. I'm supposed to be happy that you broke our wedding vows? I didn't break our vows, she said, her voice defensive. It was just a fantasy. It's not like I betrayed you. It was our agreement like our friends did. No, Amy, I said, my tone turning icy. That was a game, and I told you back then that I'd never agree to a real hall pass. I thought I'd made myself clear. She crossed her arms, frustrated. I thought you'd be more understanding. It was one weekend. I'm back now, and I still love you. It's not like I left you. I took a step closer, my voice shaking with the effort to remain calm. Did you wear your wedding ring? Her expression flickered, caught off guard by the question. Yes, I had it on, she admitted. I thought about taking it off, but he asked me to leave it on, said it made things more exciting. Of course he did, I said, disgusted. He wanted to make a joke out of your marriage to prove he could do it, and you let him. Amy's expression shifted, her hand on her hip, a familiar defiant stance. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. It was just a couple of nights. I thought you'd want to get over it. Get over it? I repeated, incredulous. You're asking me to just ignore the fact that you cheated on me? Amy stamped her foot, frustration in her eyes. I told you, it wasn't cheating. I used my hall pass. I even called you first. That's the problem, Amy, I said, my voice rising. You acted on something that never existed. I never agreed to this. You're asking me to pretend this didn't happen, to act like everything is fine. But I can't, she sighed, clearly exasperated. All right then, I don't see why you're being so dramatic. It was a fantasy, nothing more. I felt a coldness settle over me as I looked at her. Well, this fantasy you had? It's going to have consequences. You made your choice. Now I'll make mine. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed her face. You're going to divorce me over this? Are you serious? Yes, Amy, I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. I am serious. Our family, our marriage, everything we've built, it all mattered to me. But you threw it away like it was nothing. Her face twisted in anger, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. You're really going to end everything because of one weekend? You just need to get over it. I didn't respond. I simply turned and walked up to the guest room, locking the door behind me. For over an hour, I listened to her pounding on the door, insisting we needed to talk, trying to explain herself, but I kept silent. I needed time to think, and there was nothing she could say that would change what I felt. The next morning, I woke up early and left the house before Amy was awake. I drove to my parents' place, where my dad was already up, sipping his morning coffee. I sat down across from him, and for the first time, I told him everything. I didn't leave out a single detail. He listened, his face impassive, until I'd finished. When I finally stopped, he shook his head, his expression unreadable. What a mess, son. I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through. Dad, if Mom had done something like this, what would you have done? I asked, needing his honest advice. He let out a deep sigh, his gaze fixed on me. Times were different back then, Mark, but I'll tell you this. If your mother had done something like that, I wouldn't have been able to look at her the same way. But you're the one who has to decide if you can live with it or not. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. I knew he was right. If I stayed, I'd always be looking back, questioning everything. And I didn't want to live that way. I don't think I can move past this, Dad. It's like she's a stranger now. He nodded, his gaze sympathetic. Then you need to do what's right for you. Just remember, whatever choice you make, you have our support. By mid-morning, my phone started buzzing. It was Amy calling and texting, asking where I was. I ignored her messages, not ready to deal with her yet. When my daughter Julie walked into the kitchen, she looked at me, her face full of questions. Dad, Mom's been calling me, asking where you are. What's going on? I tried to keep my tone even. Nothing for you to worry about, honey. Your mom and I just need to figure some things out. Julie's eyes narrowed, a spark of suspicion lighting in them. Are you cheating on Mom? Or is it the other way around? Before I could answer, Dad spoke up, a smirk on his face. That kid of yours is sharper than she looks. Julie crossed her arms, her expression determined. So, did Mom cheat on you? I hesitated. Julie, I think that's a question you need to ask her. Undeterred, Julie took out her phone and dialed Amy, putting it on speaker. Mom, did you cheat on Dad? Amy's voice came through the speaker, startled. Julie, what on earth are you talking about? Whatever your dad told you isn't true. Julie frowned. Dad didn't tell me anything, but I can tell something's wrong. So, did you? No, I didn't, Amy snapped. And if he says I did, he's lying. Julie ended the call, looking at me with disappointment. I can tell she's lying. Dad, you always taught us to be honest. Are you going to divorce her? I sighed, feeling a deep sense of sadness. Julie, I don't know yet. But whatever happens, you know I'll always be here for you and your brother. She nodded, then turned and walked back upstairs. I looked over at Dad, who raised an eyebrow. Your girl's got a good head on her shoulders, he said. She'll get through this. I'm not sure I will, I admitted, the weight of everything pressing down on me. About half an hour later, there was a loud knock at the front door. Dad answered it, finding Amy on the porch looking furious. Mr. Butler, whatever Mark told you isn't true. He's making it all up. Dad crossed his arms, blocking her way. Whatever you say, Amy, but you're not welcome here today. Amy's face twisted in anger. Tell him I didn't do anything. If he insists on this, he'll regret it. When Dad closed the door, he turned back to me, his face grim. Be careful, son. That woman looks like she's ready for a fight. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. This wasn't going to be easy. Amy had no intention of admitting fault, and if she thought I'd back down, she was mistaken. When the kids and I returned home later that day, Amy was silent, giving me the cold shoulder. I slept in the guest room again that night, unwilling to be near her. She was angry, clearly plotting her next move, and I knew I'd have to be ready for whatever was coming. The next morning, after the kids had left for school, Amy and I finally found ourselves alone in the kitchen. She poured her coffee, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. Are you feeling all right? She asked, her voice almost cheerful. I looked at her, letting the weight of my words sink in. You know why I'm in the guest room. I don't want to be near my wife after what she did. She set her coffee down, looking me square in the eyes. You can't prove anything, Mark. If you keep pushing this, I'll make sure you regret it. Her tone was cold, her eyes hard, and I realized she had declared war. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I nodded, hiding my anger. We'll see, I replied quietly, already knowing I'd need evidence to back up my case. Amy was ready to fight, but so was I. If she wanted to act as though I couldn't prove what she'd done, I was determined to show her how wrong she was. The morning after our tense conversation, I waited until Amy left for work, then doubled back to the house. I had no intention of letting her get away with this. If she thought she could bluff her way out of this with threats and denials, she was wrong. I was going to gather all the proof I needed to confront her, and I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. Jenny had mentioned Amy getting an autograph from her soap star during their night out. I figured she wouldn't throw away such a trophy. If I knew Amy, she would have hidden it somewhere, too attached to it to let it go, but aware enough to keep it out of sight. I combed through her things, determined to find anything that would show she wasn't just pretending her fling never happened. After about 2 hours of searching, I finally found it, tucked away in an old briefcase at the back of her closet. The case was locked, but Amy had always been predictable with her codes. At the bottom, hidden beneath some old papers, was the photo. It was a glossy, signed publicity photo of the soap star, and his note read, "To my friend Amy, Joshua." But it was the back of the photo that held the real prize. Scrawled across it was a message in his handwriting. You were great in bed, Joshua. The sight of those words made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. I scanned the picture, making a digital copy before carefully placing it back where I'd found it. I wasn't done yet. I wanted more, something that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I went straight from home to Vicki Sampson's office. She was a well-known divorce attorney, notorious for her relentless approach to cases involving cheating spouses. When I laid out my story, she leaned back, her eyes gleaming with interest. This is a solid case, she said, her smile widening. I love it. We'll set the trap and spring it when there's no way for her to turn back. But you'll need to keep your cool and let her think she's winning until the very end. That means most people are going to think you're crazy or lying before we show our hand. I'm ready for that, I replied, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I want her to feel confident, to think she has the upper hand. I'm done with her lies. Good, Vicki said, nodding. Here's what I need you to do. First, check her credit card bills. We need to know exactly where she and her soap star met up. Second, get access to her iCloud or photo backup if you can. She might have taken pictures that could be useful. Some people are careful with their phones but forget about the backups. I went straight home and logged onto her computer, surprised at how easy it was to access her iCloud account. Hidden in a folder within her photo library, I found 3 incriminating pictures. 2 showed Amy with the man she believed was Joshua, while the third showed her, Joshua, and Jenny posing together with the club's name visible in the background. I copied everything to a flash drive and sent it to Vicky. She was thrilled with the evidence I'd found. "Keep all of this quiet," she warned. "Our plan is to serve her at work next Friday afternoon. That gives you time to get the kids to your parents for the weekend. And remember, don't move out of the house under any circumstances. That could give her an advantage in court." The next week crawled by, with Amy giving me the silent treatment at home. She told everyone who would listen that I was making up lies, that I was acting out of jealousy. Our daughter, Julie, even started to question whether her mother had actually done anything. Amy's lawyer responded to our divorce petition with demands for sanctions, claiming that my accusations were baseless and trying to get the court to order me out of the house. Thankfully, that request was denied. The court fast-tracked our hearing, which meant both sides had only limited time to take depositions and interview witnesses. Vicky deposed Amy and Jenny, but they both denied everything, sticking to their story that no meeting with the soap star had taken place. When it was my turn to give a deposition, Vicky advised me to tell the truth but keep things brief, not to reveal our evidence just yet. As she predicted, Amy's lawyer went after me aggressively, hammering me about my lack of proof. The smug look on his face made it clear he didn't think we had anything substantial. He seemed convinced I was making it all up, confident that Amy hadn't actually committed adultery. Vicky's plan was working. Amy thought she was in control, that she could lie her way out of it. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. Amy and her lawyer looked confident, even smug, as they entered the courtroom. I took the stand first, explaining my stance on fidelity, why I'd never agreed to a real hall pass, and detailing Amy's affair. On cross-examination, Amy's lawyer tried to discredit me, bringing up the fact that I hadn't been at the conference and hadn't seen her with anyone else. Then Amy took the stand, insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong and that she, like me, was opposed to real-life hall passes. Jenny took the stand next, backing up Amy's story, claiming there had been no encounter with the soap star and that they'd never been to a club. Jack, her husband, was in the courtroom, looking away when she glanced his way. Vicky stood up for cross-examination, and Jenny started to squirm. She denied having called Jack about Amy's night out, even when Vicky reminded her that she was under oath. She stuck to her story, denying everything. When she sat back down, Amy and her lawyer exchanged triumphant looks, clearly feeling they'd won. Amy's lawyer rose, beginning to argue for sanctions on the grounds of my false accusations. The judge seemed to be leaning in their favor when Vicky stood up with a confident smile. "Your Honor, we have rebuttal evidence we'd like to present," she said, her tone calm. Amy's lawyer shot up, outraged. "Objection! We haven't been notified of any such evidence." The judge glanced at Vicky, who replied, "We're not required to disclose rebuttal evidence, Your Honor. This evidence is only necessary because their witnesses have not been truthful." The judge motioned for her to proceed, and Vicky called her investigator to the stand. He began by confirming that the man Amy was with was not Joshua Morrow, the soap star. The real Joshua had been in Europe during the conference, and the man Amy had met was simply a look-alike, a known con man. Amy's lawyer looked smug, standing to demand the case be dismissed, since, according to him, we had no proof of actual adultery. But Vicky wasn't finished. "No, Your Honor. We're not claiming Mrs. Butler was with Joshua Morrow. We're claiming she was with someone she thought was Joshua Morrow. The adultery still took place," Vicky explained. With that, Vicky had Jenny recalled to the stand. Jenny, visibly nervous, maintained her story that there had been no call to her husband, no night out at a club. She denied it all. Then Vicky played the recording I'd made of Jenny's phone call with Jack, where she described Amy's intentions with Joshua. Amy's lawyer stood up, objecting, but the judge allowed it since I'd been an invited guest in Jack's home. When Vicky asked Jenny to confirm her voice on the recording, she had no choice but to admit it was hers. I felt a wave of vindication as Jenny finally had to acknowledge what she'd tried so hard to hide. Then Vicky called Amy back to the stand, and as she took her seat, Vicky pressed play on the recording I'd made of Amy's confession. Amy's face went pale as she heard her own voice, talking in graphic detail about her night with the man she believed to be Joshua. By the time the selfie photos and the signed autograph were shown to the court, Amy was in tears, her confidence shattered. As Amy walked off the stand, the judge looked baffled. "I'm confused," he said. "Your initial evidence suggested this man was Joshua Morrow. Now you're saying it was a look-alike?" Vicky called the investigator again, who showed surveillance photos from the club of Amy with her soap star. The investigator explained that the man was known for posing as celebrities to target women. He was a con artist and, as our investigation revealed, he had a history of several STDs. Amy's face was a mask of shock as she took in the news. The judge called for a recess, and when we reconvened, he lectured her about honesty and fidelity, his disappointment evident. He ruled in my favor, upholding our prenuptial agreement. He even went so far as to deem Amy an unfit mother, citing her deceit and irresponsibility, and awarded me primary custody of the kids. As Amy left the stand, the judge called her back, saying he wasn't finished. He also called Jenny to the bench. "You both took an oath to tell the truth in my courtroom, an oath you chose to ignore," he said sternly. "If this were a criminal trial, you'd be facing perjury charges." He fined both of them the maximum penalty for contempt of court. Amy's day only got worse when she walked out of the courthouse into a swarm of reporters, tipped off by Vicky, who asked her why she'd risked her family for a fling with a fake celebrity. Her composure finally shattered as she screamed at the reporters, and a deputy had to pull her back when she tried to grab a camera. The scene was caught on film and broadcast nationwide. Amy spent the next 6 months in county jail for the assault. By then, I was a single parent, focused on raising our kids and keeping things as steady as possible at home. When Amy was released, she called me, begging for another chance. At first, I ignored her messages, but my mother, ever sympathetic, encouraged me to meet with her. So, reluctantly, I agreed to sit down with her at her mother's house. Amy was in tears as she explained how sorry she was, how she missed me and the family, how much she regretted everything. She begged me to take her back, promising she'd be the best wife I'd ever known. I listened, letting her finish, and then I stood up, looking her directly in the eyes. "Amy, I believe you mean every word, but what's telling is what you didn't say. You never apologized for breaking our wedding vows, for betraying the trust we built together. You're only sorry things didn't go your way." Her face fell as I continued, "No, I will not take you back. You need to move on, and so do I." As I turned to leave, she burst into sobs, shouting that she was sorry, but I kept walking. For the first time, I felt free, ready to rebuild my life on my own terms. After I walked out of Amy's mother's house that day, I knew there was no going back. Whatever we had shared had crumbled, leaving only the fragments of trust and the residue of pain. The relief I felt, however, was surprising. I had expected to feel sadness, but instead I felt free. A weight had lifted that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Life as a single parent was challenging, but it was also incredibly rewarding. My focus shifted to Julie and our son, Brandon, who were both trying to make sense of everything that had happened. They needed stability, and I was determined to give it to them. I threw myself into work and parenting, creating a steady routine that kept us moving forward. Julie, being perceptive as always, soon asked questions about what had happened. I tried to answer as honestly as I could without burdening her with unnecessary details. She understood more than I thought she would, nodding thoughtfully when I explained why her mom and I couldn't stay together. "I get it, Dad," she said one night as we were doing the dishes together. "You've always been honest. I'm proud of you for that." Her words touched me deeply, and I realized how much they were both watching and learning from me through this difficult time. They needed a steady role model, and if nothing else, I could give them that. I would show them that life could go on, that happiness wasn't tied to one person or one relationship. Months passed, and Amy's attempts to contact me faded away. I'd initially ignored her calls and messages, even when she'd tried reaching out through mutual friends. It was clear she wanted to reconcile, or at least salvage her relationship with the kids, but the court had granted me full custody, with supervised visitation only. She'd have to earn back their trust in her own time, on her own terms. In the meantime, the media circus around Amy's outburst in court and her public confrontation with the reporter eventually died down, though the effects lingered in our small town. People whispered, but they generally kept their distance. The kids dealt with some gossip at school, but they handled it with resilience. Julie even defended her mom at one point, telling a friend, "She made mistakes, but everyone does. It doesn't change who I am." Her strength amazed me. As time passed, we settled into a rhythm that felt like home, just the three of us. The kids adapted to the new normal, and I found myself reflecting on the person I'd become through all of this. I hadn't anticipated that my life would shift so dramatically, but I realized that I was stronger and more capable than I'd ever known. The experience had forced me to confront my values and rebuild my life from the ground up. One evening, my dad invited me over for dinner. We'd stayed close throughout the ordeal, and his quiet support had been invaluable. Over a simple meal, we talked about the past year and how everything had changed. "Son," he said, looking at me with that steady gaze of his, "I've watched you handle all of this with a lot of grace, more than most men would have. You've set a good example for those kids." I nodded, grateful for his words. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you and Mom. I just want them to grow up knowing that they're loved, that they don't have to carry this burden." "They won't," he replied, reaching across the table to squeeze my shoulder. "You're showing them what it means to move forward with dignity." It was that night as I drove home that I felt a true sense of closure. The anger, the betrayal, and even the resentment I'd held on to finally started to fade. I knew I didn't have to carry it any longer. The future was wide open, and I was ready to step into it without looking back. Over time, things continued to improve. I became more involved in my community, joining a local hiking group and volunteering at the kids' school events. Through these activities, I started making new friends, people who knew me as I was now, not as half of the couple I had once been. My reputation, tarnished by Amy's actions, began to rebuild as people saw who I truly was. It was during a school fundraiser that I met Sarah, a warm, down-to-earth woman who worked as a counselor at Julie's school. We struck up a conversation while setting up tables, and I found myself enjoying her company. She was easy to talk to, with a calm energy that put me at ease. Over the next few weeks, we crossed paths more frequently, and each time I felt a little lighter, a little more hopeful. Eventually, Sarah and I began spending time together outside of school functions. We'd meet for coffee, go for walks in the nearby park, and talk about everything from raising kids to our shared love of the outdoors. It wasn't long before our friendship deepened into something more, something I hadn't been sure I'd ever feel again. One evening, as we sat by a small lake near my house watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Mark," she began, "you've been through a lot, and you've come out of it stronger. I admire that." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I didn't do it alone. The kids, my family, even this town. They've all helped me get through it. And now, you're here too." She reached for my hand, her fingers warm and reassuring. "I'm glad I can be a part of your life, and I hope that we can build something good together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the water, I realized that this was a new beginning. It wasn't about replacing what I'd lost or pretending the past hadn't happened. It was about moving forward with honesty, integrity, and a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah and I weren't rushing anything, but for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. The kids took to Sarah quickly, and she brought a calm, nurturing presence into our lives. She was kind and supportive, never trying to replace their mother, but simply being there for them. Julie, who had always been insightful beyond her years, was the first to talk to me about it. "Dad," she said one evening as we walked the dog together, "Sarah's really nice. I like her. She makes you happy, doesn't she?" I nodded, smiling at her. "Yeah, she does. and it's important to me that you and Brandon are okay with this. You two come first." Julie nodded thoughtfully. "I think it's okay. We all deserve to be happy, right?" Hearing her say that was all the confirmation I needed. Life wasn't about getting back what was lost, but about creating something new and meaningful. My bond with the kids had deepened, and my relationship with Sarah felt honest and grounded. Months passed, and the kids grew closer to Sarah, who became a constant presence in our lives. She was there at soccer games, school plays, and family dinners, and her kindness and stability helped all of us heal. With her by my side, I felt more confident than ever in the life I was building. Finally, comma. As the first anniversary of the divorce approached, I reflected on the journey I'd taken. The betrayal that had shattered my world no longer held power over me. I realized I'd gained something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of who I was, what I valued, and the strength to start over. Sarah, and I decided to host a small gathering to celebrate the new chapter in my life. We invited close friends and family, and that evening, as I looked around at the people who had supported me through everything, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by the warmth of friendship, family, and love. Standing beside Sarah, with Julie and Brandon laughing nearby, I knew that the life I'd rebuilt was stronger and more resilient than anything I'd had before. My journey wasn't just about surviving a betrayal. It was about discovering the life I truly wanted, built on integrity, love, and genuine connection. As the evening wound down, Sarah took my hand, looking up at me with that gentle smile of hers. "Here's to new beginnings," she said softly. I raised my glass, smiling back. To new beginnings, and to the people who make them possible. With those words, I felt a profound sense of peace. The life I had now wasn't the one I'd planned, but it was a life filled with purpose, love, and hope. And as I looked around at the people I cared about, I knew I'd finally come home. Here's the next story. Morning light crept through the curtains, and the lingering effects of an unrelenting headache compelled me out of bed. I stumbled into the bathroom, swallowing 2 aspirin and bracing myself by the sink, praying that my upset stomach would subside. My name is Ron Jameson, and yesterday, after a tough day at work, my world turned upside down. I stepped into our house, completely oblivious of the mental wreckage that awaited me. My wife, Chrissy, looked at me with a mix of love and grief. She admitted that she had been connected with another man for the past year. She referred to their friendship as a lifeline for him. A guy was broken by a vehicle accident that killed his wife while he escaped unharmed. Chrissy described how she attempted to heal his damaged spirit, how their relationship evolved into love and then physical intimacy. She assured me that her affections for me had not altered and that she would return once this man no longer needed her. She swore to be present for our children and me, balancing her life between our family and her commitment to this man, whom she believed would soon go. In my startled state, her announcement felt like a sucker hit. I yelled at her, trying in vain to make sense of the treachery. Chrissy responded sharply. She accused me of failing to sincerely love and support her, rejecting our wedding vows. She reasoned that if I loved her, I would accept the situation, no matter how painful it was. The conversation left me in a state of emotional turmoil, calling into question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and marital commitment. Chrissy was definitely upset and angry at me. I was infuriated, and to avoid assaulting her, I began drinking and cursing. Once I'd cooled down, I questioned how she would react if I met another lady who wanted you. Chrissy sneered. "You are an overweight, middle-aged man with thinning hair." She told me that if I tried to divorce her, she would ruin me. I was furious and perplexed about what to do. My mind was in complete disarray and I couldn't think clearly. I continued to drink and rage at Chrissy. She packed her bag and announced, "I'm leaving to be with my lover until you calm down and accept the situation." I couldn't recall much after that. I sat on our bed and decided to take stock. Chrissy was correct. I was middle-aged, my hair was thinning, and I was around 20 pounds overweight. I couldn't modify my age, but I could manage my hair and weight. First, I needed to find out where my children were. It was Saturday morning, so they should be at home. After exploring the home, I noticed they were not present. Where did Chrissy take them? I was just about to call her parents when I heard a car in the driveway. It was Chris's car, and I noticed our kids getting out. I greeted Chrissy at the door. "Good. You are sober," she snapped. "Where were the children?" I asked. "They were with me. I could not leave them with you." "You did not take them to your lover's house, did you?" I hissed. "Ron, watch your language." She snapped again. "They were already present. My friend is kind. Unlike you yesterday, I wouldn't risk leaving them with you." I conceded that you had a point. "But why didn't you take the kids to your parents' home? They weren't home," Chrissy said as she walked upstairs. I followed her. "Are you here to stay or will you return to your lover? Oh, Ron, stop being so childish. I've told you how things will be. I will not dispute about it. The discussion is over. Accept it or not. I still love you even though you are acting like an idiot. When he no longer requires my services, I will return full-time. So what should we do now?" I battled to remain calm. "I'm currently packing a few items to spend a few days with my pal, Dot, until you calm down and accept the circumstances. How about the kids?" I attempted to guilt her into staying, but it did not work. "If you don't want to watch them, phone my parents and they will." Chrissy grabbed another bag and went, leaving my brain about to explode. But I knew I had to keep it together for the kids. I wasn't about to take Chris's infidelity lying down. No respectable man would. After Chrissy left, I checked on the children and inquired whether they had any homework. They all complained, but agreed to get started after I promised we'd go see their grandparents, Chrissy's parents. The kids enjoyed going there because Pop helped them build go-karts. Chrissy's parents, Sam and Mary, resided on a tiny farm nearby. Sam, a retired tinkerer, had a spacious workshop where they worked on their go-karts. Sometimes I'd aid two people, being a certified mechanic at the local Ford dealership. I wanted to speak with Chris's parents to see whether they knew about her boyfriend and obtain their advice. I'd always had a terrific relationship with them and considered them my surrogate parents because my lived far away. However, I was concerned that they may side with Chrissy. I verified that the kids were doing their homework and realized how much they meant to me. Ron, the oldest at 16, played football but was too small for a college scholarship. Sally, 15, was a typical teenager and an excellent student. Kyle, the youngest at 11, was a pleasant accident and a happy-go-lucky kid. While the kids were working, I made coffee and started making a to-do list. I called my supervisor, Bob Clarkson, to explain my dilemma. I had been with the dealership when it started 23 years ago, and Bob had been my employer for 15 years. He felt sympathetic, having witnessed his son's nasty divorce in which his ex-wife leveled false accusations against him. "Damn, I muttered. "She's a cold witch." "Tell me about it," Bob muttered coldly. "For a week, we anticipated the police to arrest Gary. These accusations are terrible and difficult to deny. When a lady accuses a man, the cops become concerned. Gary's lone saving grace was his ex-mother-in-law. Carol was concerned that telling her mother about Gary's mistreatment of her grandchild would destroy things. Bev, known for being tough but fair, quickly rushed her granddaughter to the doctor to see if she had been mistreated. The doctor confirmed she hadn't. Bev went to the police and threatened to testify against her daughter if they filed charges. She also told Carol that exposing her pills could result in her losing custody. "God bless Bev," I responded, surprised by what women could accomplish to get their way. Bob said, "Amen to that. If there is anything I can do to help you, please let me know. I will make it happen." I requested the next week off, utilizing my personal days and vacation time. Bob agreed and even offered additional time if necessary. "There is something else," I mentioned. "I need an excellent divorce attorney. That, quote, easy," Bob said. "Use the same attorney as my son." He cleaned Carol's clock. Gary received primary custody, maintained the house, and Carol is required to pay child support. His name is Dwight Tucker. I believe I have his number. Tucker's name kept coming up in my dreams as my son's divorce became more complicated. Bob discovered Dwight Tucker's card after approximately a minute. I contacted his office expecting no one to answer on a Saturday, but luck was on my side. Not only was Mr. Tucker present, but his assistant informed me that he had a cancellation and could see me if I arrived in 30 minutes. I told the kids I needed to go out for an hour and behave. I drove to Mr. Tucker's office and arrived in 20 minutes. Dwight Tucker, a handsome man in his early to mid-30s with deep blue eyes and a warm grin, greeted me. I was confident he scored points with the female jurors. "What can I do for you today?" Dwight asked as I sat down. My wife told me yesterday that she was cheating on me with a younger man, and I was ashamed and outraged. I told what happened the day before. Dwight took notes and shook his head. When I revealed it, my wife claimed she still loved me but planned to continue seeing the guy. He stopped me. "Let me clarify this," Dwight murmured, his eyes hardening. "Your wife claims to love you, yet she will continue to see this person in an embarrassed state." I nodded. "Okay, go ahead," Dwight said. I said that Chrissy became enraged when I refused to accept her proposal. I admitted that I called her a strumpet and a hooker. I vividly remembered how Chrissy laughed when I asked how she would feel if I met another woman. She belittled me, saying no woman would want me and threatening to ruin me if I sought to divorce her. "Did she really say all that?" Dwight asked incredulously. "Mr. Fremont, no offense, but your wife is either exceedingly heartless or has major mental problems. None were taken." I exhaled. I think the same way. I then told him that during our dispute, she left the kids at her lover's place where they stayed the night. Dwight's head snapped up, and he smiled before writing anything down. "Now, for the $64,000 question, Dot. What would you like to do?" Dwight inquired, stapling his fingers. "I can't live with this situation," I said after a moment. "I am not sure if I can move past this, but I do not want to be ruined in a divorce or lose my children." Dwight nodded compassionately. "This is prevalent among women facing divorce because of their terrible behavior, but I'll work hard to limit any damage she can cause, Dot. You will receive at least 50% of your joint assets. However, the courts do not care about infidelity. Therefore, you may be required to pay alimony and child support." I felt deflated. Despite Dwight's assurances, it appeared like I would be taken to the cleaners. "Yes, that is feasible, which is why we must act quickly," Dwight explained, studying his notes. "Your wife abandoned the marital home and left your children at her lover's house, which is a major no-no in some courts, Dot. You currently have custody, and we can work to keep it that way. I'll file an emergency restraining order against your wife, allowing you to remain in the house temporarily. The longer you stay, the more compelling your case for primary custody. Does your wife work?" "Yes, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are part-time days at the hospital." I responded, then added, "That is presumably where she met this guy." Dwight agreed and inquired how much she earned. "I mentioned $25,000 each year, but I actually made around $80,000. I need to ask you a critical question, and I want you to think carefully." Dwight said this while staring directly at me. "Do you still love her? Do you want to attempt to work it out?" I looked at the floor for a long time, Dot. When I looked up, tears streamed down my cheeks. "I adore her, but I can't accept the circumstances. She degraded me and violated her promises. I simply want a divorce." Dwight asked the last question, turning to a blank page of paper. "Tell me about your assets." I rapidly reviewed our assets and indicated that we had approximately $3,500 in checking, $44,000 in savings, and a $20,000 CD. I had approximately $150,000 in my 401k, whereas Chrissy had significantly less in her retirement plan from her full-time employment at the hospital. Despite the hospital's typically greater perks, my firm provided a superior healthcare plan, which we utilized. We also had 2 automobiles in our names and a house with low equity because we maxed out the loan when we purchased it a few years ago. "This is what I want you to do," Dwight said, looking prepared for fight. "Withdraw half of the savings, checking, and CD amounts and deposit them in a second account in your name exclusively. I emphasize that I cannot touch the CD without Chrissy's signature." "Not an issue," Dwight said, calculating. "Take $33,750 from your savings, pay as many house bills as you can with your bank account, then cancel any joint credit cards and acquire a new one in your name exclusively." "I still have a credit card from before we were married," I explained. "I don't use it often because our joint card provides cash back." "Even better," Dwight smiled. "You will not need a new card." Dwight prepared a list of instructions and delivered it to me. "Go to my secretary and have her contact Taylor Locksmith to change your house locks. Come back, and we'll go over the following steps." Miss Carlson soon reached Taylor Locksmith on the phone. They indicated they would arrive about noon. I went back to Dwight's office as he ended the call. We're unfortunate, he explained. If I fax my documents today, we'll see Judge Johnson. Why is that lucky, I asked. He despised cheats. Dwight smiled. Dottie quote S an old-school Bible Belt judge who despises infidelity. This works to our advantage. If he hadn't been accessible, I'd have had to work more. But Judge Johnson was a friend of my father. He wouldn't mind if I called him at home. Dwight stood up and gave me his hand. I shook it gratefully. Dwight directed you to go home before you left. Go take care of your banking needs. I am preparing a petition for an emergency restraining order against your wife. She will not be allowed in your home or within 500 feet of you or your children. She's with her lover and has left your children there. This should assist with the order. It may be reversed later, but you will be designated as the primary caregiver by Friday. I will have her served with divorce papers, then we will see how she reacts. For the first time since Chrissy delivered her bombshell. I felt like I was regaining control. Because the bank wasn't crowded, I promptly obtained a cashier's check for my portion of the funds and deactivated our shared credit card, paying off its $537 balance from my checking account. I also paid the mortgage 2 months ahead of schedule, using up an additional $2,600 with the cashier's check in hand. I went to another bank and opened accounts under my name exclusively. When I arrived home, the kids were watching television. I placed them into my car and drove them to my in-laws. As the children ran into Sam's workshop, he waved from within. Mary greeted me with a kiss. A minute later, Sam joined us. I have something difficult to say, I began. Chrissy is having an affair and I am filing for divorce. I don't believe you, Sam remarked forcefully. What proof have you got? She told me. I said gently, tears rolling down my cheeks. Just then, the kids entered. Please stay outside for a few minutes, I instructed them. Why, Ron? Ron? Ron asked. Because I stated so, I spoke more harshly than I intended. Ron. Ron saw my cries and swiftly pushed his siblings back out. Did she tell you? Mary asked in disbelief. Yes, I replied forcefully. I described the previous evening, including Chris's threats and insults. They were stunned and Sam was furious. I still do not believe it. I quote call her and put it on speakerphone. Sam dialed Chrissy and placed the phone on the coffee table. Hey, Daddy, Chrissy responded cheerfully. What can I do for you? Ron is here, Sam said. Are you having an affair? After a lengthy silence, Chrissy demanded, What exactly did he say? He stated that you are having lovemaking with another man and that you love him. It, quote, complicated, Daddy, she pleaded. I'm attempting to assist this man who has suffered a terrible tragedy. Sam's face became crimson. Are you making love with him or not? We have had lovemaking. But I still love Ron. I can't leave this man right now. I adore him too. I was stunned. Chrissy had always been a daddy's girl, and I expected Sam to make excuses for her. Chrissy. Sam's voice was choked. I never imagined my daughter would become an immoral woman. Daddy, please, Chrissy pleaded. But Sam hung up. Minutes later, the phone rang again. Mary moved to answer it. Leave it alone, Sam ordered, but Mary took it anyhow. Sam took the phone from her grasp and tossed it on the fireplace. I said to leave things alone, he yelled. She was taken aback by her husband's rage and moved away. I was as astonished as you were. The room fell silent as Sam and Mary received the news. Sam finally hugged me. Ron, I'm very sorry. I can't believe what our daughter did to you. We'll assist you in any way we can. Mary will speak with her later and let you know how it goes. Right now, I'm too angry to talk to her. I needed to go to meet the locksmith. After forcing the kids into the van, I hugged Sam and Mary and offered them to dinner to discuss further. Sally started crying on the way home. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Where did you hear this? I asked. From me, Ron declared defiantly. I sneaked back inside and listened. I groaned, thinking they needed to know but unsure how to tell them without inflicting too much harm. Damn, Chrissy. She hadn't thought about the kids when she was with her new lover. Yes, it appears that your mother and I will be having a divorce, I said softly. But why? Kyle cried. Your mother is in love with another man, I stated. Do you imply she's making love with another man? Sally spoke through tears. I detest her. She's a complete witch. Sally, do not say anything about your mother, I reprimanded, even though I felt the same way. The locks were changed precisely on time. Chrissy arrived 10 minutes later, screaming into the driveway. Did you tell my parents? I am sure you called me a strumpet and a hooker. Chrissy screamed. I thought you loved me, Chrissy, I said sad. You profoundly offended me when you described me as an ugly, middle-aged man who no other woman would desire. Your pity, love, I can do without. You also threatened to ruin me. How can you claim you love me if you honestly believe what you're doing is correct? It doesn't matter if your parents know. Chrissy appeared distraught. Okay, I apologize. I did not mean those things. She attempted to apologize. I was only irritated because you labeled me a strumpet and a hooker. You promised to love, respect, and cherish me. Shame on you. If you loved me, you'd accept my condition. I am not abandoning you for him. I simply adore him too, and I'm trying to assist him. He's young and will ultimately move on. Chrissy, I murmured, shaking my head, if you're going to quote our vows, remember that you swore to abandon all others. A married woman will not sleep with a young man simply because they are hurting. I recognize that you are broken goods, and I no longer want you in my life. Accept it or not, that is your option. Chrissy blushed red and appeared confused, but her eyes hardened with new arrogance. She was definitely thinking about her next point as she breathed heavily. At the time, I hoped I didn't love her, but I still did. Deeply. Ron Christie spoke in a tone she used with the children. Stop being an idiot. I am your wife. I adore you, and I will see you again when this man is healthy. I was extremely heartbroken, yet my love for her had transformed into complete hatred. No comma, Chrissy. I do not know you. My wife was loving and faithful. You? I don't recognize. For all I know, this is just one of many incidents. I can't trust you anymore. Christie's face reddened with rage. This isn't an affair. And he's the first person I've been with since our wedding. He is hurt, and I shall assist him. Whether you approve or not, suit yourselves. I refuse to accept this. I do not trust you. So I'm going to have the kids' DNA tested to prove they're mine. You are a terrible jerk, Chrissy spit. This is going to get really unpleasant. Do you remember what I told you would happen if you tried to divorce me? I would sooner die in poverty than live with a lady who lacks morality, I said, staring down at her. She appeared to be unconscious of the dangers that were ahead for her. A sheriff's truck arrived just then. The deputies approached Chrissy. Are you Christine Jameson? He asked. Yes, Chrissy answered, puzzled. Ma'am, this is a restraining order. You cannot enter the house and must remain 500 feet away. Do you understand? But that is my home, Chrissy sputtered. All of my belongings are inside. You have 15 minutes to get your belongings. The deputy spoke. I nodded in accord. I'll take my kids to the backyard. I said, I want to see my kids. Chrissy spoke hurriedly. Ma'am, the deputy stated that the restraining order is to protect your children from you. Chrissy turned to me and raged. Did you do this? You are taking my children away. No comma, Chrissy. You did it, I replied calmly. You abandoned our house and left our children alone at your lover's residence. I did not abandon our home, and he is a beautiful man. Chrissy screamed. I am assisting him by sleeping with him. If he is so lovely, go live with him and show him your love. Or does he only want to utilize you for cheap pleasure? I reacted mostly for the deputy's benefit rather than Chris's. I brought the kids out the backyard and told them that their mother was gathering her belongings to take to her new man's place, but I would let them see her before she left. When I brought them out front, Kyle burst into tears and ran into his mother's arms, imploring her not to leave. Christy cried, saying, Please, Ron, can't you see what you're doing to these children? Anger rose in me, but I suppressed it. Don't talk about the children. I have not done anything to them. You took them to your lover's home while you were with him. Ron, why don't you realize that I can't leave him? Chrissy stated this while crying. Chrissy, you've already abandoned your husband, children, and house. It quote time we did the same for you. You failed to consider the implications of your choices, and now you're facing them. Ron Jr. questioned why. Chrissy tried to explain to her son, but he clearly did not trust her. However, Sally gave it to her mother. You are nothing but selfish, which she said, spitting in her mother's face. I had to grab Sally to stop her from assaulting Chrissy and demand an apology, but she refused. Chrissy was caught off guard and fell on the ground, crying. Sally and Chrissy had been fighting recently, which I assumed was normal teenage rebellion. I believed Chrissy had irrevocably harmed their relationship. As I held Sally, Chrissy got up, dashed to her car, and drove away, slamming the steering wheel. Kyle tried to go after her, shouting, "Mommy, don't leave us!" Ron Jr. apprehended him and brought him back. The deputy glanced at me with sadness. "Mr. Jameson, I sincerely apologize for what you are going through." Sam and Mary visited us for dinner that night. I had planned to grill burgers, but Mary took over the kitchen and made meatloaf and her renowned macaroni and cheese, which the kids enjoyed while she cooked. Sam and I drank a few beers in the living room. He was visibly distressed by his daughter's conduct. I recounted the restraining order and how Chrissy had left the kids alone at her lover's house, which grieved Sam even further. Sam finally mentioned that Mary had spoken with Chrissy approximately 1 hour after you departed. "How did it go?" I asked Dot. "It was terrible," Sam conceded. "Mary tried to reason with Chrissy, but she is adamant she is correct and we are all wrong. She believes we are nasty people. Mary became enraged and told Chrissy not to call us again and that she would testify against her if it came to court." As you can expect, the supper was extremely somber. The only bright side was when Sam asked the kids over to work on their go-karts the following day, which made Ron Jr. and Kyle happy. Sally, on the other hand, sat there angry and refused to eat. I let it go, knowing she was as hurt as I was. On Friday, Chrissy was served with divorce papers at the hospital. Friends present said she lost it, yelling at the process server and threatening to ruin me. She was sent home, or rather to her lover's home. Chrissy hired Amber, the lawyer Dwight knew. He claimed she wasn't as good as she thought. Amber attempted to get the restraining order lifted, but Judge Johnson only modified it, allowing Chrissy supervised trips to the house without her boyfriend there. He cautioned her that any violations would result in the loss of her visitation rights. Chrissy was initially pleased, but her happiness faded when the judge ordered her to pay child support, forcing her to return to work full-time. Despite her outburst at the hospital, they are likely to take her back due to the nurse shortage and her talents. Following the hearing, the DNA results arrived. It took me nearly half a day to open the mail. When I did, I was flooded with joy. My children were truly mine. I read the report a few times to reassure myself. I knew I loved my children regardless of the outcome. Even if Chrissy abandoned her lover and returned home, I would not forgive her. She was a negative influence and should be kept away from the children. I used all of my personal days and vacation time to spend with the children. When that ran out, Chrissy's parents stepped in. Sam and Mary refused to speak with Chrissy until she came to her senses. After a week of frequent daily calls, Sam banned her phone number. Chrissy and I were left to hash out the visitation arrangement, so our solicitors relayed our views. We decided that Chrissy may come by on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays between 6 and 7 p.m. Mary offered to monitor, but I insisted on being present during the first visit to establish clear regulations. On the first Monday, Chrissy arrived in an unfamiliar car, most likely driven by her lovers. She approached the home uneasily, smiling tentatively. "Hello, Ron. How are you, Mother?" "It's nice to see you, Chrissy." "You must leave," I snapped. "The judge stated that your partner cannot be within 500 feet of this house." Horror washed over her face. But he was simply dropping me off. Are you brain dead?" I was infuriated. The judge was clear. There's no sweetheart here. Tell him to go now, and I will not tell the judge. Chrissy nodded immediately and returned to the car. I walked outside and copied the car plate number. Then he returned to the porch as the automobile drove away. Chrissy replied defiantly, "He'll pick me up later. Tell him to join you down the block. I do not want him near the house." Chris's face turned angry. "Ron, I'm tired of the way you treat me. You did not need to steal money from our bank account or deactivate my credit card. Chrissy, I did not steal anything. The funds were utilized to repay the credit card and make 2 mortgage payments. I wanted to make sure the kids had somewhere to stay while we straightened things out. As for deleting the credit card, I didn't want to be held responsible for any spending you incurred while with your boyfriend." Chrissy's cheeks flushed with wrath and contempt. "This isn't an affair. And he's not my lover. You're being a jerk." Before I could reply, Mary moved forward and slapped Chrissy across the face. Chrissy and I were both surprised as she took a step back, bewildered, and stared at her mother. "Chrissy, if you ever disrespect Ron again, I'll rip your dress off and slap your buttocks red if you want to see the kids in the living room. I'll talk to Ron first, Then join you. Be warned. If you say or do anything inappropriate, I will kick you out of this residence. Chrissy nodded sheepishly and entered. Mary sympathized with Ron, saying, I apologize for my brain-dead daughter. Thank you for standing up for me. I expressed gratitude. And then I left. The restraining order was lifted 2 weeks later, just as Dwight had mentioned. By then, I had established myself as the primary caregiver and was allowed to remain in the house. Chrissy continued to see her partner, therefore her child support stayed. She could spend unsupervised time with the kids in public, but she couldn't take them to her lover's house or have him there. After 4 months of delays, our first court date to finalize the divorce arrived before the attorney could speak. Judge Johnson inquired whether we had attended counseling. The attorneys admitted that we hadn't. So the judge ordered 8 sessions of marital counseling. Neither Chrissy nor I disagreed. I believed they were a waste of time, but I didn't want to upset the judge. Chrissy seems to feel she could persuade me or the therapist that her acts were justified. The first session with therapist and Patterson went as predicted. Chrissy spent the most of the hour arguing that what she was doing was the Christian thing to do, and she appeared horrified by her own arrogance. In the second week, I gently questioned Chrissy's claims, wondering if it would be fair if I began having sexual relations with another woman. I cringed, expecting an onslaught on my manhood, but nothing happened. Chrissy did not respond straight away, but I didn't mind. During the lengthy divorce, I made some changes. When the lady you love tells you that you aren't good enough, you want to prove her wrong. So I underwent hair transplantation surgery. It cost around $4,000, and I debated it, not wanting to be teased. But while I was still on holiday, I went for it. My hair was buzz cut. Then plugs from the back were put in the front. I stayed at home for the first week, explaining to the kids that it was a minor medical operation. After 10 days, I looked like my old self, and my hair became longer every week. After recovering, I began exercising and running. I could barely run half a mile at first, but I gradually got up to 10 miles. I also joined a gym and switched our meals to healthy ones. The youngsters initially whined about missing fast food, cookies, ice cream, and pizza. I found some entertaining, healthful recipes online, but others did not work out well. We laughed, scrapped them, and made sandwiches. Cooking became a family activity. Despite the anguish of Chris's treachery, I started to feel better about myself on my first day back to work. I received an ego boost. Trudy, the receptionist, gave me an odd look, but didn't make any comments about my new hairstyle. "Welcome back, Ron," she said. Then her eyes focused on me. "There's something unique about you." I reddened a little. "Oh, I have been on a diet. I have lost 18 pounds. I'm hoping to lose another 5. She laughs and nods. "It truly suits you. If I wasn't married, I would be all over you. Thank you for the ego boost. But according to my wife, I'm just a middle-aged man with no romantic attraction. So much so that she has found a lover." I attempted to make a joke out of it, but it went flat. Everyone in the organization was already aware of my condition. Storm clouds passed over Trudy's eyes. Chrissy is an idiot. Either that, or she has a loose screw. Ron, you're a fantastic guy, and many women would be glad to have you. Do not let Chrissy get into your brain. That was the best jolt I'd received in months. I now felt less like a loser. I returned to the present when, I asked my wife again. "Chrissy, how would you react if Ron came home and informed you that he was sleeping with another woman?" As I indicated, I was expecting Chrissy to attack my manhood, but she didn't. I did see her looking at me on our initial meeting. I suppose she could no longer claim that I had thinning hair and was obese. That was another boost to my ego. Anyway, I just sat in my chair and waited while Chrissy seemed to think of something to say. She couldn't possibly claim that I couldn't have another woman if she had another man. I suppose if he was attempting to help that woman overcome some tragedy, as she arrogantly stated, I would be fine with it. What if he told you that he adored this woman and that the lovemaking was excellent? Again, I'd accept it, Chrissy insisted. However, he would have to guarantee me that the children and I would be well cared for. The discussion continued, with Anne attempting to persuade Chrissy that her position was ludicrous, but Chrissy refused to move. As I had feared, these sessions were simply a waste of time. Chrissy was just going to use them to try to persuade me that she was correct. That was not going to happen. and by now, the immediate shock of Chrissy's actions had worn off. It quote S, an amusing fact about love. If it is not tended, it will begin to die. By the third week, everything had shifted. Chrissy entered the session very somber and spoke little. Mostly, she listened. Whatever had changed had set Chrissy back a little. Perhaps she wasn't as haughty today because Anne was patiently and compassionately disputing her premise at every turn. I also caught Chrissy looking at me when she thought I wouldn't notice. I continued to exercise and shed a couple more pounds. I'd even started doing a lot of yard work, which had given me an excellent tan. A few months before the therapy sessions were scheduled, I made another shift. I was becoming dissatisfied with my job. I enjoyed mending cars, and not only the engines. I found great satisfaction in doing bodywork. I'd been repairing ancient cars since I was 14 years old. I could do everything now. I regarded starting my own business as an opportunity to spend more time with my children. I discussed it with Sam, and he agreed to help me. I wanted to open my own shop and begin growing a business, but I couldn't simply quit my work and do it. I didn't have enough money to support us till the business took off. We'd starve before I could make a go at it. However, because Sam's property was also in an industrial zone, he consented to allow me set up my business in his workshop. Sam, quote, S tinkering shop was formerly a horse barn that he converted. There was plenty of room for Sam and me if I got the business started. Sam agreed to lease me a plot of land on the road so that I could build my own structure. I spent time at work examining how they set things up. The dealership was basically set up to manage more volume than I had anticipated. They completed some bodywork at the dealership, but most of it was substituted out. With this in mind, I reduced my tool and equipment requirements. One thing is certain, I'd need to create a paint booth. Sam was not only all right with it, but even helped me build it. I used the savings I had released from our shared accounts, as well as a small loan from Sam, to fund the venture. I started part-time, primarily working weekends and evenings. It was entertaining, and the kids came out several times to watch, or even participate. I truly enjoyed showing Ron Jr. how to do things. Even Sally got her hands dirty and enjoyed telling her girlfriends how she helped rebuild an engine or paint a Corvette. That made her more appealing to the lads at school. I acquired business by word of mouth, and I quickly wondered if I shouldn't go full-time. That decision was solidified when I was informed that they needed me to work over the weekend to complete a backlog of workouts. I couldn't do that because I had my own customers to take care of. I expected I'd get fired. When I went in to inform Bob that I couldn't work because I had personal business obligations. "Have you got a minute, Bob?" I inquired, putting my head inside his office. "Sure, Ron." He waved me in. "I'm delighted you are working this weekend. We have 44 cars coming in on Friday that need to be thoroughly inspected and prepared. We need to get these out by the end of the month." I winced somewhat at that. Most people are unaware that factories provide specific incentives to dealerships. If they sell a certain number of cars in a month, they receive a reduction on the invoice. For example, the factory could say, "If you sell 300 vehicles this month, we'll deduct $150 from your cost." That's a savings of $4 or $500. However, if the dealership sells only 299, they receive nothing. This was critical for the dealership. "That's it, Bob," I said, feeling sweat run down my back. "I can't work this weekend. I began my own business on weekends, and I have commitments." "I'm sorry, Ron," Bob replied curtly. "But if you're unable to work this weekend, I may have to let you go." "I understand, Bob," I responded resignedly. "I'm simply hoping there are no bad feelings. I've been working on establishing my own business. I want to spend more time with my children and earn some more money for their education expenses. I will clean out my locker. I quote, "Mem, sorry to lose you, Ron," Bob remarked sadly. "Tell me about your business. Where are you located, and what types of jobs do you do?" I mentioned that I had set up my company on my father-in-law's property and listed the equipment and tools I possessed. I was equipped to do practically any type of car repair, including bodywork. "Go, get yourself a cup of coffee, then return here," Bob explained, reaching for his phone. I didn't want any coffee, so I walked to my locker and stored my belongings in a box. Losing this employment meant things were going to be difficult for a time. The kids would have to be put on Chris's health insurance plan because I had removed her from mine. Nonetheless, I was convinced I could make it. I was turning down nearly as much business as I was receiving in. Bob motioned me into his office when he noticed me walking down the hall. "I have a bargain for you, Ron," he remarked eagerly. "If you work this weekend, you will be reimbursed for any money lost because your customers are dissatisfied. No." I shake my head. I couldn't do that to my clients. "Hold on. I am not finished," Bob remarked, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. It was an independent contractor agreement. "I truly need you this weekend. I also believe you can persuade your consumers to wait a few days. If you can achieve that and your shop passes our inspection, we'll hire you as an independent contractor to complete some of our bodywork." I was startled, but I accepted the deal. After that weekend, I was basically working full-time on my business. If there was a problem at the dealership and I wasn't too busy, I'd go in. Sam also started helping me part-time, and Mary volunteered to do my books. I was suddenly earning more money than I had ever made working for the dealership. My marriage was the one thing that remained a shambles in my life. And after the fourth counseling session, I wanted to terminate it. I didn't really care what Chrissy was doing with her new beau. Oh, do not get me wrong. It's still pain to think of my wife being with another man, but I wasn't thinking about it as much. In our fifth session, I decided to take the offensive. I felt if I attacked Chrissy hard enough, she might decide to quit these pointless sessions. I decided to confront her about the most upsetting thing she had said, that I was too ugly to attract another woman. When asked whether I had anything to say, I lit into Chrissy, "I've decided you're not only selfish, but also quite cruel. How dare you tell the man you're meant to love that he's ugly and middle-aged? No lady would ever want you to wound me in such a way that I doubt I can ever recover." "Oh God, Ron, I am so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm ashamed I ever said it. If I could, I'd take it back. I love you, just not enough to abandon your lover. Keep your regrets to yourself." "You will need them more than I do," I snapped back. Chrissy broke into uncontrollable sobs. No matter what Ann or I said, we couldn't calm her down, so we ended the session and gave us homework to do before the next one. I was not looking forward to attending because I thought these seminars were a complete waste of time. The homework consisted of answering a series of questions. Some made sense, such as how we interacted with our parents. How was our bedtime experience? Some of the questions did not make sense to me, like what my favorite meal and drink were or what kind of car I drove. But one question prompted me to pause and consider whether I could alter anything. What would it be? I had been working on the questionnaire the night after the last session, but I put it away after reading that question. I wanted to think about it for a while. The next day, I finally wrote that I wished I had been a better husband so that my wife would still love me. We submitted our papers during the next session, but Anne did not even glance at them. Instead, she asked if we had any questions or wanted to talk about something. "I want to ask Chrissy a question." I responded immediately, nodded, and turned to greet my estranged wife, Chrissy. "I don't think we're getting anywhere with these sessions. You quote V made it clear that you're not leaving your friend Bruce Hartman, therefore there's no prospect of reconciliation. Why don't we simply end this and get a divorce? How do you know his name?" Chrissy inquired, shocked. "When you first came over to see the kids, I obtained his license number. After that, it was easy to figure out his name, but it doesn't really matter. I have no desire to retaliate or even communicate with him. I simply don't care anymore. I want to move on." Chrissy gazed up at me with the saddest eyes I'd ever seen. I hated seeing her in pain and wanted to hug her, but I knew it wouldn't help. So I proceeded. "I know your lawyer has been dissatisfied with the settlement I've proposed thus far, so I've instructed my solicitor to provide some alternatives. I'm willing to give you extra visits with the kids. I am also offering to give you $1,000 each month in alimony for 3 years. I just want you out at all costs." I observed Chrissy's reaction, but all I saw was awful grief. She had made it abundantly apparent that she was not going to stop seeing the guy, and I couldn't and would not tolerate my wife making love with another man for the life of me. I just couldn't believe she thought I'd put up with that circumstance. At this time, it didn't matter. I just wanted out. I determined to push for the end of this farce. "I understand that what you stated about me was somewhat accurate. It really hurt when you said it. and I told you I didn't think I'd get over it. But as time passed, I realized that I was getting over it anyhow. As you can see, I've attempted to improve myself. I don't think I'm the man you underestimated when you started dating Bruce. I also began dating subsequently. Divorced. You can care for your guy buddy for as long as you wish, but I believe it is time to end this, if for no other reason, so you can begin to rebuild a relationship with your children. There you have it. Chrissy burst into tears and departed the room, looking as stunned as I was. She eventually controlled herself and informed me she wanted to see Chrissy alone for the next session, followed by me alone for the final session. I sighed and agreed. When Chrissy poured all of this on me, I was enraged and filled with hatred. But months later, I was simply worn out. I could see the anguish this was causing not just for me, but also for Chrissy, her parents, and, most importantly, our children. I wanted it to stop. I was also no longer outraged that Chrissy was making love with some guy. When I came for my final appointment with Anne, I was relieved that Chrissy was not present, as well as that the counseling session was coming to a conclusion. I want to compliment you for your patience over all of these sessions and began. I know this entire scenario has been really distressing for you. After meeting with Chrissy last week, I believe I now understand what happened to your wife. I was now seated on the edge of my chair. Finally, maybe I'd figure out why Chrissy decided to end our marriage. Do you recall the homework I assigned you? She asked. I just nodded. I had forgotten about it and assumed it was of little use in these counseling sessions. The way you both responded to one particular question astonished me. And when she withdrew 2 pieces of paper from her folder, the question was, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Do you recall that? I nodded. You said that you wished you had been a better spouse so that your wife would have continued to love you. Chrissy sobbed uncontrollably when she heard that. It took me a long to calm her down. I wasn't sure what to think, say, or do, so I just sat there. Your wife has never ceased loving you. Yeah, that is why she remains with Bruce. She loved me so much. I smirked and gave him a disapproving look, but then groaned. Ron, I noticed that Chrissy was going through a major midlife crisis as her children grew older. Chrissy felt like her life was slipping away. She is. And I believe she has always been a nice and compassionate individual. She eventually came into Bruce, who was in desperate need of her help. She mixed her longing to be young again with Bruce's desperate need for forgiveness after his wife died for love. That doesn't change anything, I insisted. Is she still sleeping with Bruce? Actually, she is not. Ron. Really? This was new to me. Then why didn't Chrissy tell me? He moaned. I know this won't change your feelings at this point, but you deserve to know the complete truth. Bruce left town on the same day you told Chrissy you were going to start dating, saying he only wanted to finish the divorce. She thought she'd already lost you. I pondered about it, but Anne was correct. It did not change my mind. Too much had happened to return. My life was on track now, and I wanted to move on. I would never trust Chrissy again, and I did not want to live like that. Most importantly, I wanted the kids to rebond with their mother. Sally's grades had plummeted since the incident began, and she was still unhappy with her mother. Kyle had become moody and distant, and he was behaving out at school. This was probably the worst effect of Chris's actions. Kyle was no longer Katie's upbeat self. Ron Jr. handled the situation best. He was not furious or grumpy, but any time his mother's name was spoken, he changed the conversation. Maybe I am mistaken. Perhaps he reacts worse than the 2 girls. I honestly don't know. One last thing, Ron replied, pulling out the second piece of paper. This is Chris's response to the question of changing one item. She stated that if she could change one thing, it would be to never meet Bruce Hartman. The divorce was finalized, and Chrissy was allowed to visit the children on Wednesdays and Fridays, as agreed upon. I made certain to take the kids out on Fridays before Chrissy arrived. Our interactions were stiff and awkward at first, but we eventually began eating meals with the kids, and one evening Chrissy asked if she might stay the night. No, I responded with a chuckle. The bed in the extra room isn't particularly comfortable. It is preferable that you return to your original location the following time. I don't think I would ever be alone with you. Bruce Hartman's story was not entirely truthful. His wife died driving away from him after discovering he was cheating. She fled in wrath fast and perished in a vehicle accident. Why did he leave the town? I assume it was due to a serious beating he received outside a nearby tavern. 5 damaged ribs, 1 cracked kneecap, 5 lost teeth, and 2 busted nuts. I had to request a favor from some friends. It was worthwhile. The striking guaranteed that he would never be with another woman, let alone delight one. Chrissy eventually restored a loving relationship with her children. Or should I say, with Sally and Kyle. Chrissy's distance from Ron Jr. remained constant regardless of what she did. I expected Sally to carry a grudge, yet she was the first to totally accept her mother's return. Chrissy, on the other hand, was finally able to repair her relationship with her parents. Her father, like Ron Jr., had a certain coolness about him. Most Sundays we'd eat dinner there as a family, but we weren't. Chrissy again apologized for everything that had transpired. Finally, I asked her to please stop. I will never forgive you, and it is pointless to try, I told her. Oh, Chrissy, please stop acting so childish. I told you how things will be. I have no intention of arguing about it. The discussion is over. Accept it or not. That is your option. We will never get back together again. Even if you are the last woman on the world, and if the destiny of humanity relied on me making love to you, I would decline. 3 years later, I was married. I married Sally's teacher. How we met and what happened is a story for another day. What counts is that the children love her and accept her as a member of the family. Chrissy has still not accepted this. I have moved on. I'm not going to do anything about her. After all, the discussion had ended. She either accepts it or not. Here's the next story. It was simply another Saturday in the suburbs. Maybe for everyone except me, because I was stuck having a yard sale. I truly dislike yard sales. Like a lot of guys, I'd rather just throw out the old stuff. But my wife wouldn't have it, even when I told her we didn't need the money. She responded by explaining how we may donate the money to our children's school. She's very involved in the PTA and is always looking for ways to improve the school. She cares about the PTA as much as I do about my automobile. So there I was, resting in my garden hammock, attempting to relax before Sunday. Sunday is my big day. I'm training for a marathon, therefore I do my longest runs, then we quote re-talking about 24 miles. After that, I'm exhausted till nightfall, but as it cools, I feel a burst of energy. This is when I wash my automobile. My automobile is the 2009 Mustang GT in the garage. It has those bullet rims and a MagnaFlow exhaust. It was my pride and joy before to meeting my wife. And yes, my garage is off limits for the yard sale. It quote S as neat as can be. Even has a television. Then they showed up. I tried ignoring them in the hopes that they would depart, but it didn't work. Excuse me, sir. A young man claims his girlfriend, or perhaps wife, is clinging to him. They had that bright, young, and in love appearance. Is the pricing for this game system reasonable? Just $50. You meant $500, correct? He's looking at the twin screen system and the 3D displays. That includes everything. All the games, headsets, and additional controllers. All that for $500. His eyes were big, like a child on Christmas morning. The 2 large 3D screens alone cost $300 each, and the gaming system is worth approximately $400. Games cost $60 each, and you're okay with just $500 for everything? No, I snapped back. It's $50, take or leave it. His girl nudged him, but he was not easily fooled. It works, correct? He looked at me with uncertainty. Rarely used. Less than a month old. It's nearly new, I confirmed. Of course it works. Even if you don't want it, others will. Was he away from your children, attending college or something? He probed. Nope. I stated it was mine. Then why is it so cheap? He questioned. I just sighed deeply. That's the least appealing aspect of yard sales. People want a deal, but they are curious about why. The truth is, I needed to get rid of the gaming setup, which is why we conducted a yard sale. I motioned toward the seated area. I got him and his girlfriend a beer, and I got myself a soda. Then I got into my narrative about how gaming almost destroyed me. I'm Perry Tyler, and no, I'm not the famous male who dresses up as a woman in movies. I was Perry Tyler long before he was famous. Anyway, I studied manufacturing technology at the University of Manitoba and currently work as the head CMC programmer at Thompson Manufacturing. I had a great house in Michigan near Detroit when this all started. I had been with my wife, Denise, for about 10 years. Everything looked to be going well. I thought we were satisfied. We had what most people would consider a wonderful life. We weren't wealthy, but neither were we starving. We, like many others in the United States, were ordinary people struggling in the middle class. Denise and I were diametrically opposite in terms of appearance and muscle. She was there early. Bloom and I caught up later to continue the narrative. Denise always thought I had a talent for getting into activities and then moving on, but with gaming, it stuck like nothing else. It started as a weekend activity, then every night we skipped dinners, missing out on quality time together. She warned me. They said it was pulling us apart. I shrugged it off. It's simply a game, I'd say. But deep inside, I understood it was an escape, a universe in which I was in control, not just another guy pressing buttons at work. Denise tried, really did. I even took up a controller once to attempt to join in, but it was not her thing. And soon we were like two ships going through the night. I got home one day to find her gone. The note on the counter stated that she wanted room. That was my wake-up call. I looked around the gaming rig, all the hours I put into it. For what? That's why it's $50. I'm going to cut it out, beginning with a blank slate. So, are you sure? He asked again. Perhaps seeing the sincerity in my spill? Yes, I nodded. Moving forward requires letting go. He handed over the money without saying a word. As they went, I felt a combination of relief and emptiness. However, there is also a glimmer of hope. Perhaps it is time to choose pastimes that bring us together rather than divide us. Perhaps it is not too late for Denise and me during our early years, just after college. Denise had her best times. She wasn't recognized for her breathtaking beauty, but she was attractive and had an eye-catching body. Her long, lustrous brown hair complemented her otherwise average-looking face. She was not ugly, but her hair added to her appeal. Her shape wasn't flawless, but she had wonderful legs and was well endowed, which appealed to many men, including myself. Ignore it. Her stomach was not flat. Even in her 20s, this isn't a good sign. And her curves made most guys ignore the fact that she had what is today considered a large behind. Nowadays, it appears that having a larger behind is in style. Me? I was the geek through and through, both during and after college. I was thin, a total nerd, and always wore those massive spectacles. Social situations were not my thing. I was far too shy. Nonetheless, I couldn't resist falling for Denise. Most of us struggled in the years after graduation. Denise worked as a waitress while I settled into my new job, which allowed me to start making good money right away. This position forced me to confront my social concerns square on. I began as a CNC operator, then advanced to a setup position, and eventually became a programmer. Each promotion offered new responsibility and greater money. Throughout this time, I continued to hang out with my college friends. Denise and I had several conversations throughout the years, but we never dated. However, as time passed, we became closer and eventually started dating. Things got serious quickly. Denise was the first woman who felt at ease with me on an intimate level. Sure, I'd had sex before, but it was usually hasty, done in the back of a car or in a dorm when no one was looking. But with Denise, we both had our own homes, allowing us to take our time and enjoy being together. Her physique changed throughout time, even while we were in our mid-20s. I was hooked on them, and she thought it was humorous that I was still hooked. It appears that all the guys we knew had tried their luck and moved on. They had been with her when she was still lively and energetic. By the time I arrived, time had done its thing. After a year together, I knew something for certain. Denise wasn't just my girlfriend. She was my best friend. I didn't feel right when we were apart. She felt the same way. So I asked the big question. She stared at me, bewildered, as if I was speaking about someone else. Maybe she saw too many aging single females at work and assumed it was her. One day, she initially said no. She wanted to know why I wanted to be married. She said, "You're already getting it on with me. You can have it without marrying me, so why?" I gazed directly into her eyes. "Denise, I've had feelings for you for a long time, even before you realized I existed. I dreamed about you two. Now, after all of our time together, being without you feels weird. It is not about putting it on or anything like that. Denise, I simply want to be with you forever. You're my best friend. But I don't want to be just buddies, and the prospect of someone else snagging you is too much to bear." "Denise, I love you." "Why didn't you start with that?" she said. "Of course, Perry, I will marry you. But do not underestimate yourself. You would have had a chance with me much earlier. Being with you makes me joyful too. For starters, most males before you were only in it for the money. You're the only one who cared about getting to know me. Even after we got together, you remained sweet to me. I would never let you leave, Dot, and I never will. I also love you." So there it was. Despite everything, we knew we were each other's ultimate goal. It was not about the past or what we could provide. It was about the really profound bond we shared, the type that transcends language, the sort you struggle to keep because you know how precious it is. And with that, we headed into the future, prepared to face whatever came our way. 10 years into our marriage, everything looked excellent. We were lucky to have 2 boys. Bobby was full of enthusiasm at 5, and Johnny, a quieter 3-year-old. We had delayed to start our family until we were financially prepared. Our house was nice, with 2 cars and a pool, and we took many vacations. It appeared that we had all we needed to live a happy life. However, Denise and I evolved over time. She had become the type of wife you see everywhere. Not the same woman that attracted attention in the past, but let's get this straight. Denise was my love, not simply a woman. Yes, time. And having our boys altered her body. However, when I looked at her, I saw the love of my life and the mother of our children. This link was stronger than any changes in appearance. Despite these changes, I still found ways to be near to her when the kids weren't looking. It was a fun part of our daily lives on my end. Everything had also gone nicely. Running a department helped me gain confidence and improve my social abilities. And thanks to Denise's meals, I was in better shape than ever. However, let me try again to convey this in a more straightforward and sympathetic manner. Denise and I developed a life together over 10 years. We were blessed with 2 great boys, Bobby, who was always up to something, and Johnny, who was a little quieter but equally wonderful. We had been careful to wait until we were in a good financial situation before having children. Our home offered everything a family could want. There is room for everyone. A pool for summer. We even managed to go on a few trips. It appeared like we had everything we needed for a fulfilling and happy existence. However, 10 years might bring about significant changes. Denise's appearance had altered, and she was now the type of ordinary mom you may not notice. But that was not the way I saw her. She was everything for me. My girlfriend is the mother of our children. The way she looked was only part of our adventure. Our relationship extended beyond the surface. Despite the jokes and laughs over our daily routines, our closeness was strong. 2 had changed over time. My employment had instilled in me confidence and a sense of purpose. Denise, who had always been supportive of me, helped me feel at ease with who I was. Our tale involved more than simply surface changes. It was about the life we established together and the love that grew with time. That was it. The last step for me was to transition from my large glasses to contacts. I suppose it all began with Mary Claire Thorpe, our babysitter, making a comment that stayed. We threw a cookout for her because she had recently completed a 2-year college course in childcare. She had her sights set on a higher level of education, such as a master's or PhD. This was a significant step, and we wanted to participate in her excitement. Mary Claire was a head-turner, tall and slim with the perfect contours. She was not bulky, yet she stood out in her own way. She had legs for days and a very visible behind, especially while swimming in our pool. But it never really sparked anything in me. It's similar to admiring someone's expensive car, but not wanting it for yourself. You admire its power, yet are satisfied with what you have. There we were. Denise and I are children. Mary, Claire, her brother Stuart, and a few neighbors gathered around our pool to celebrate. We were giving Mary Claire gifts and congratulating her on her MMS, as we called her. Mary Claire drank a couple beers and felt lightheaded. Denise presented her our gift, a new laptop, but suggested that it might be car-related due to my nerdy side. She handed over the box, joking that she had expected something quite different. "Mr. Tyler isn't a nerd. He's hot. I'd go for him in an instant," said a tipsy Mary Claire. Denise's look has sharpened. Claire, despite knowing Mary, did not intend it. It took her off guard. Denise may have seen me through new eyes in her mind for the first time in a long time, as I did. We were just an ordinary middle-aged couple with children and bills to pay. We lived like everyone else we knew. I was surprised to learn that I was still in the game. See, when Denise and I met, we were at a low point in terms of physical appearance. She was past her prime, but I had never really had one. but having even one tipsy babysitter call me hot made Denise sit up and take note. Our lives had become increasingly focused on children and the house. Our fire appeared to have cooled to a warm area. Women notice and take it personally. Me? I figured maybe we just needed to try something new together to get the sparks going again. I read a lot about how weird people may get into kids' lives through video games. Our children were nearing that age. The advice was plain. Play these games with your children. I'm not much of a gamer, but I went out and bought the nicest gaming setup money could buy. I've got all of the top games shelling out for Beyond the Call of Duty and other great hits for both solo and multiplayer play. When I set it up at home, Denise looked at me as if I had lost my mind. This is going to heat things up. I spoke with less confidence than I felt. How is that intended to work? She questioned in two ways. I began by playing several games with others. We'll unite and improve our teamwork outside of familial situations. She interjected, We're already a good team. Yes, I agree. But aside from kids and housework, we don't only have fun together. Some games might push us against one another for rewards. What kind of rewards? She inquired with a trace of uncertainty. I said, It depends on the game. The winner can demand anything from the loser. Don't get too excited, Perry, she chided, a teasing twinkle in her eyes. You are not receiving that special favor simply because you are good at gaming. Why isn't what you've got enough? Because I want you all, I admitted honestly. She smiled warmly and gave out a quiet chuckle, expressing joy that had been missing from her lately. This joyful attitude lasted until we started playing. My job requires a lot of computer work and dealing with different software, so I picked it up quickly. Denise had a much more difficult time. The reality is that modern games are intense and require quick thinking, quick reactions, and strategic insight, which Denise appeared to lack. The first night we collaborated on Beyond the Call of Duty was a disaster. Denise left before she realized where we were. We restarted, but she left before we could make a move. Denise's repeated defeats that night caused her to drop the controller and walk away frustrated. The next night, we decided to have an offline battle. So, what is the stake? I inquired. Definitely not what you are hoping for. She spoke with a hint of mischief. I will not take that risk unless I am confident I can keep you at bay. I felt a twinge of disappointment, but in the game I quickly outpaced her. Defeated her 15 times in 14 minutes. Needless to say, I came up with nothing. It's not even a consolation. Denise did not say anything to me for the following few days. I was about to give up on the gaming notion completely. I was thinking that would be something we might revisit once we had children. I'm old enough to enjoy it. This rework attempted to streamline the language and substance while retaining the spirit and feelings of the original story. It was changed to ensure a pleasant read in accordance with the directions supplied. Denise contacted me one evening, full of joy, and asked, What about Saturday night? I was perplexed. Is it Saturday night? Yeah, you and I are playing video games, she explained. If you win, you will have a fantastic night with me. If I win, you must pamper me just way I like. I was curious. What is the purpose of this plan? It emerges that Mary Claire's brother Stuart promised to teach her how to play video games. Denise encouraged us to find interesting things to do together, but she was not excellent at games. When Stuart saw our gaming setup, he became really thrilled. He proposed teaching Denise for $10 if he could also use it. Sometimes. So there it was, a game challenge for Saturday evening. All week we exchanged flirty glances and smiles. Even our intimate encounters felt more intense. I know what you're dreaming of, she taunted during a close encounter. Finally, Saturday arrived after dinner and the kids had gone to bed. We both got ready. We faced off at the gaming console, each in our nightgowns and nothing else, smiling broadly. We choose a battle game. The first to reach 5 wins would receive their prize. We started. I discovered cover and searched for Denise in the gaming world. This set up a scenario in which a spouse was attempting to learn a shared passion, and the addition of a humorous, intimate wager triggered an unusual difficulty. The expectation had grown all week, injecting a sense of excitement and amusement into their daily lives. The game is now on. The conflict wasn't simply on screen. It was also a fun clash of wishes and expectations. with each action in the game imbued with a sense of intimacy and shared adventure that had been growing all along. I took a deep breath and shot not one, but 9 million bullets straight between my wife's eyes. "That's one," I murmured, bracing myself. But that swift victory was my last. Denise fired 5 times, fast and hard, leaving me unable to comprehend the final shot. She appeared immediately above me like a shadow in a tree, hidden. Her ability left me in the dust. I was angry and she just grinned. "Come on, love," she sang as she led me to our room. She dropped her robe on the bed. I did what she asked and kept our pledge. She enjoyed it. After 3 times, she pulled me away, gasping. I grabbed a Pepsi, drank it quickly, and returned to the hotel. "Don't you want to?" she asked. She was more than willing to repay the favor. Do I want it, or should she simply do her thing? Turning her no was a first for me, and I was outraged. I didn't even want to be around her. The following day, Sunday, involved a long run. 20 miles later, I relaxed until it was time to wash my car. "Do you want to play a little?" she called. I passed a beat but said I'd watch. She was something else. New tricks I never tried after I couldn't stand the game any longer. She started dinner, and I chose a different game. Unmapped was no simple game. It felt like I was in a film. You are Jim Columbus, chasing a city full of treasure discovered by your renowned ancestor. He never mentioned that city in his novels. He stated there was a deep, evil power there that may destroy us all. Aside from fighting evil men and monsters, you must crack codes and navigate your route. All the while, some people close to you are treating you badly. Denise noticed me playing and walked over to sit in her game chair. She jumped into my game, but she was terrible at it. I grinned, seeing a rematch coming. I planned to reclaim my pride in a week. This time, no maps. We'd play online with new puzzles and foes each time. The first to discover the treasure wins. "What is the bet this time?" she asked. "Do you know what I'm after?" I uttered it in a whisper. "This time," she added, "you're going to get inside every part of me and don't skip my toes. Do the same thing you did last time. I'm still buzzing when you speak. I can't stop thinking about your touch." I simply stood up and proceeded to clean my car. That week, I dug deep into the game. It felt as if I was living there. I also browsed online chat groups for tips. Denise had little chance of winning this round. It was a different game each time. When Saturday came along, we put the kids to bed and stripped down to our gaming skin. We got into the game each in our own chair. She had the advantage in shootouts, but I could solve the problems with ease. In a rematch from the previous week, she won by a hair, so I fulfilled my commitment. I made certain she felt every instant and sound she made. "Let's just say the neighbors may have heard a lot. Harry, I love it when you do it," she said, "and I love you." Getting this game was the best decision we'd ever made. We discovered a renewed flame in each other, all due to a video game challenge. It was wild and intense, bringing us closer than we had ever been. The digital world was more than just winning and losing. It was about connecting in multiple ways. "I'm delighted you're happy," I said. "I'm not feeling really happy inside." "How about next weekend?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I responded. "We have one more game to play," she pointed out. I got up and went to get the game box. We looked over together in bed. "You are on," I responded, trying to seem brave. "This game could hurt you," she warned with a grin. "If I win, you must lick the thing you want the most but can't have," she said. "What if you win?" she asked. "Nothing," I replied, leaving her perplexed. She came closer and hugged me. "Don't you want anything?" she pressed. "Not now," I said. She noted that it had been a while since we were close. "You are okay?" I shut her off. I went for a run the next day and raged and ran 20 miles. Running and cleaning a car later provided me time to reflect and plan. That night, as Dennis was cooking, I devised a devious plan. I went throughout our living room, looking at things on the shelf for the next day at work. I launched an old application on my computer. We had a lot of stuffed toys around the house with nanny cams in them from when we didn't trust babysitters with our children. Mary Claire, a friend, began to use our home as if it were her own, but those cameras were for safety. Then I decided it was time to put those cameras to use again for something important. This plan, while sneaky, felt necessary for what lay ahead. Denise contacted me one evening full of joy and asked, "What about Saturday night?" I was perplexed. Is it Saturday night? Yeah, you and I are playing video games, she explained. If you win, you will have a fantastic night with me. If I win, you must pamper me just way I like. I was curious, Dot. What is the purpose of this plan? It emerges that Mary Claire's brother Stuart promised to teach her how to play video games. Denise encouraged us to find interesting things to do together, but she was not excellent at games. When Stuart saw our gaming setup, he became really thrilled. He proposed training Denise for only $1.10 if he could use it occasionally. So there it was, a game challenge for Saturday evening. All week, we exchanged flirty glances and smiles. Even our intimate encounters felt more intense. I know what you're dreaming of, she taunted during a close encounter. Finally, Saturday arrived after dinner and the kids had gone to bed. We both got ready. We squared off in front of the gaming console, each wearing nothing but our nightgowns, smiling widely. We choose a battle game. The first to reach 5 wins would receive their prize. We started. I found cover and looked for Denise in the game world. This set up a scenario in which a spouse was attempting to learn a shared passion, and the addition of a humorous, intimate wager triggered an unusual difficulty. The expectation had grown all week, injecting a sense of excitement and amusement into their daily lives. The game is now on. The conflict wasn't simply on screen, it was also a fun clash of wishes and expectations. With each move in the game, a sense of intimacy and shared experience grew, as it had all along. She stated we had plenty of time all morning, and even after Stuart stared at his companion, who attempted to say something but stopped when Stuart looked at him, he walked out muttering. Denise and Stuart saw him depart, and Denise led Stuart into another room. What came next was shocking. Denise began to get incredibly close to Stuart in a way that made my heart race. I could not believe it, so I quickly started recording it on my computer and informed my assistant that I needed to rush home for an urgent matter. I was out and in my car in no time. They had claimed they had the entire afternoon, so I wasn't in a rush. My Mustang roared to life, disrupting the silence of the morning. I drove by a few co-workers eager to get home. I parked a little distance so they wouldn't hear my car. I snuck in through the backyard. The back door was wide open. I stepped gently inside, curious where Stuart's pal had gone. I caught them in the act on our dining table, and the sight made my wrath boil. Stuart was somewhat associated with my Denise. She'd never been with me. It seemed so normal to them. That's when I noticed Stuart's body on the opposite side of the room, watching them, caught up in the moment. I was filled with a variety of emotions, the kind that makes your heart ache and your mind spin. Here I was, witnessing something I never expected in my own home. It was a muddle of emotions and astonishment, a memory I'll never forget. With haste, Denise spoke again. I'm not into it. Didn't you say you both had the entire day? I raised my voice, causing them to look my direction. Denise swiftly straightened herself out while Stuart almost fell over. Harry, why are you here? She gasped, shocked. Crap, Stuart mumbled, unable to contain his disbelief. He is not well equipped. Denise attempted to dress in hurry. That was sufficient for me. Anger seized control. I strode across the room directly at Stuart. His eyes widened even though he was larger than me. He knew what would happen next. Mike Tyson, a boxer, once stated that the best punch he ever threw occurred in a personal moment. I felt like Tyson as my punch sailed at Stuart. Except for a few self-defense classes, I'm not into fighting. I used to be a huge nerd. But that day I was astounded by my own behavior. I came to a stop just as Stuart attempted to pull his pants up, tripping with them around his ankles. My legs came to a standstill, but my upper body continued to move. This accelerated my punch at precisely the perfect moment. My hips rotated, gaining power as my shoulders connected with Stuart's, and my arm shot my punch in a perfect arc, striking Stu's right eye. His spectacles smashed, sending bits flying everywhere. I gripped Stuart's shirt with my left hand, preventing him from falling, while my right hand readied to fly again. This time, it impacted his nose, causing blood to flow out as I prepared to strike. Once again, it felt as if I was observing from outside my body. I was completely aware of everything going on in the room. I felt everything around me, even the smallest details. Denise's face was filled with panic as she ran toward me. I also noticed that Stuart's body kept moving even as I punched him hard. Perhaps too much gaming had gotten to him. Perhaps he couldn't discern the difference between love and hurt. Denise attempted to stop me by grasping my arm. She was heavier than me, so my body simply reacted. My foot in my hard-working shoe struck Stuart in the most painful way. His screaming could be heard from far away. I pushed Denise aside and snatched a snow globe from the table, aiming it at Stuart's pal Dot. It missed where I targeted, but struck his hand severely, slashing and shattering it. He'll be using the other hand for a time. He screamed, and I looked at Denise, who was attempting to dress and talk at the same time. "Harry, we need to chat," she said. "What is there to talk about?" I responded. "You've saved him for now. However, things will not be the same the following time. Leave my house. All of you." "What are you saying?" she yelled back. "I do not love him. I wanted to prevent you from going to jail. Our children need both of us. We cannot solve this if Stuart is killed. He is nothing. Look at him. Please leave my residence." I spoke again. "Bring Stuart and his friend with you." Stuart lay on the ground, holding himself still in anguish. His nose was now very large and filled with blood. His right eye was becoming darker, and his damaged spectacles hung from one ear. His pants were still down. Stuart's buddy was also there, crying and trying to open the locked door with only his left hand. I went over, handed Denise her keys from the counter, opened the door, and instructed her to get them both out. Getting Stuart out was difficult. Denise attempted to hug me before departing, but I pushed her away. "You will see. It's not so horrible," she explained. "I'll be back after the hospital." "No, you are not coming back. Go see your parents or simply leave. But do not come back here," I advised her. "Get your dad to take up your belongings until the lawyers say you can return." "Don't say that, Harry," she urged. "It's just a mix-up. We will not split. I don't want our boys to have a divided home. I love you. We only need to talk." I slammed the door so violently that it nearly hit her. The heavy door even developed a crack. I realized I did not have much time. I contacted Mary Claire and asked her to fetch the kids and take them to my parents. I told her I might end up in jail but didn't explain why. Then I went to the bank and transferred all of my savings. I left the check as is. I closed the savings account totally. That way, if someone checked online, they wouldn't realize there was another account. I was confident Denise's lawyer would find out when it closed. He might receive a court order to look into how much dough was in there, but getting it back, no dice. I contacted my employer. We were in a tight spot and he knew the drill for nasty splits. Being rich attracts a crowd, not necessarily the best type. He showed me how to hide my money offshore. I selected a new bank, inserted the cash, and whoosh, it was transferred to another account. Denise's legal team would go on a wild goose chase. I didn't hang around that bank, so they're tracing me. Good luck. A little price of around $100 did not provide much peace of mind. Next up, my broker. I bid goodbye to my equities and bonds. Shifting that to an offshore account reduced its value by 15%. Pulling out cash or receiving a check would result in taxes, and that is a bigger hit. The boss was up to something else. His friend from the Vegas casino could help. He also advised me to hide my automobile in his garage. My secretary accompanied him to his place. Then we switched to her Honda. I picked up my rental automobile. Cops were already snooping as they drove back home. I offered them a cheerful wave. "Mr. Tyler, there are 2 guys who have been severely injured. One cop stated that they will not seek charges, but we want to hear your tale." I walked in on one with my wife. I said, "Did what?" "Any guy would require proof." Their expressions spoke it all. "Come in," I told them this. I took a step. Life was becoming twisted. But I needed to make some moves. With each play, I danced around the trap created by Denise and her gang. The game was on, and I was trying to keep what was mine out of their grasp. They agreed to accompany me after some prodding. I showed them the video from my personal computer. The scene, before everything went wrong with Stuart. I stopped the video early. "I understand what you're going through." The first cop admitted he knew it was difficult, even though those guys didn't want to make things worse. We needed to travel to the station. My wife convinced them to remain quiet. "It won't be long," he said. I was fine with it. Everything at home was ready. My home had 2 doors. The back one had a hard lock. We were advised not to lose the keys. If we do, it would take a significant amount of effort to repair. Denise misplaced hers during a trip. As I was leaving, I broke my front door key in the lock. My other key is in my Mustang at the station. They did not put me in jail. We are just in a room to discuss. They didn't remove my belongings. I was not the only one that got arrested. I called Mary Claire. She'd brought my children to my parents. I told her it might be preferable to speak with my brother, but I thanked her for her help. Then I called my father and told him what was going. He intended to take the lads fishing. My father knew numerous places, and my boys enjoyed it. My phone buzzed shortly thereafter. It was Denise. I received the call. She tried again, and I did the same. When Denise's mother called, I couldn't just hang up on her. She advised me to go to the hospital and see Denise while she waited for news on Stuart. I asked her what she knew about the entire situation. She claimed Denise had just told her that we were fighting because of something I had done to Stuart, and Denise was attempting to resolve the situation. I thought it should be Denise's responsibility to inform her family the truth. If she lied, I'd clear it up. I said that I couldn't go to the hospital because I was locked up. Just as I hung up, my phone flooded with calls from Denise, but I did not pick up. Half an hour later, while waiting to be let out, I told the cop in charge my story. Denise barged into the police station. Someone pointed her towards my room. She ran toward me, hoping for an embrace. I took a step back. "Hands up! Keep your distance!" I said, "Honey, we need to go home and talk about this," she insisted. "There is nothing to talk about," I fired back. "Once the divorce is finalized, you can spend time with Stuart or anyone else." "Damn it, Perry," she exclaimed. "You are the one I desire. We all want things," I replied harshly. "But you cannot have me again. Perry, we need to work this out. I mean it," she pressed. "I messed up, but it doesn't mean I stopped loving you. You allowed him to have you in ways you never did with me. I've been asking for years. We've been together forever. You barely know him. I am the one who married you. I supported you. He introduced you to video games when you were ill. I quote, EM. The one who looks after you. What has he done for you? We have children. We had dreams. He's ruined our marriage. It appears that he is your future now." In a simpler tone, here's the story, compressed and smoothed out. She requested me to go see Denise in the hospital because she was concerned about Stuart. I asked what she knew. Denise mentioned that we had an argument about something I did to Stuart, and Denise wanted to remedy it. I thought Denise should be truthful with her parents. If not, I'll tell them the truth. I informed her that I couldn't go. I was in jail shortly after we chatted. Denise often called, but I ignored her. Later, I told the detective everything. Denise arrived at the station while she awaited her release. She was directed to my room and attempted to embrace me. I took a step back and said, "Please stay away." She pleaded, "We need to fix it at home." I responded, "There is nothing to fix after we divorce. She is free to be with Stuart or anyone else." She exclaimed in frustration, "But I want you," I responded. "We cannot always get what we want. You will not have me again." She insisted on discussing her errors while maintaining she still loved me. I erupted in frustration at her decision. "Stuart, she refused me intimacies. Despite our extensive history, marriage, and support, I contrasted my caring for her with what Stuart offered our children, our dreams. He has finished it. He is your future." I concluded with a combination of resignation and resentment. This version reduces the story's emotional intricacies to simpler, more plain language. The heart of the disagreement and the emotion of betrayal are still obvious. "Well, you and he both laughed at me, right?" "Perry, no one laughed at you," she started. "Perry, I love you. Do not do this to us. I did not break us," I expressed myself coldly. "You did. Perry, you have never seen the real me," she said. When she was younger, she realized she would do everything to win. She is extremely motivated to win. However, she suddenly feels compelled to exert control over anything. "You have always been there for me. I've always been loved and cared for when no one else did. Even as we grew older, I changed, and you became who you are. You are always there, wanting what has always been yours. You quote, recorrect. That is why I do not do those things with you. Do you realize how much it hurts? I am done talking. Anything else? Say it clearly." "My lawyer," I said. "Perry, we need to chat. Calm," she said. I turned away and behaved childishly, fingers in ears, singing la la la. Her face flushed as she watched her. "Perry, don't make me do this," she remarked, shaking her head. She pulled out her phone. She chatted to someone before snapping it shut. She returned with a harsh glare. She departed. Then the detective returned. Mr. Tyler. Sorry, but we need to hold you, he said. The individual you hit has changed their mind and intends to seek charges. Denise said, Call me when you are ready to listen. This might have been simple, but you forced me expose my negative side. I was placed in a cell. Denise arrived about an hour later. Perry, where are the children? She asked. I wouldn't speak to her. Perry, you are going this too far. It isn't as it seems. I need your key for the back door. It's not with your belongings. And there's a portion caught in the front door, she explained. Dennis, the house is only in my name. I've stated it before. I don't want you in my house. If you enter, I will accuse you of breaking in or entering without authorization. I told Perry, you don't want to be with me. She snapped back. There is still time for you to apologize so that we can talk about it and resolve it. We, LL, go back to the way things were and be content. We'll be together forever. Years from now. This will be a fading memory. I'll even let you join me in that way, if it means so much to you. 3 or 4. I spit out. I do not want it anymore. All I want now is to be rid of you. I want to start anew with someone who genuinely loves me and remains faithful. Her eyes became thinner and her lips straighter. Perry, I love you, she said. Do not make me do this. I spoke with a lawyer. She's very tough. She told me I could have your house, most of your money, retirement, and child support. You'd end up at a shelter eating canned salmon every night until the kids were adults. This will not happen. I will accept my guilt and choose jail time. I smirked. You are just upset and hurt. She laughed. You'll regret giving up your chance with me later when we talk calmly and I explain everything to you. No, I won't. I said, it simply doesn't matter anymore. Why not? She sneered. Did you discover anyone else? You're currently in demand, and I am just not it. It'd never been about anyone else. I told Dennis that I've loved him since we met in college. I understand you were with others and had more going on than I did. I know many males were with you before me. I didn't mind since I reminded myself that they had you first, but I would be the last one. We were supposed to be together forever. Tears came to her eyes and she understood. Perry, all of this was new to me. She cried. Perry, I didn't realize it was so profound, or that you adored me so much. I kind of assumed you couldn't find anyone else. Denise, it's over now. Let us simply finish it. I told Perry not to do this. We I'll both be sad if we do. She said, forget it. Denise, I love tuna, I let out. She exited the room and a guard entered saying my wife was escorting me out. I asked whether I needed to take money from her to get out. You could say no, he explained, but that would be foolish. Do you see him? I claimed I didn't want her help. Denise came back in. Why stay here? She asked. We need to talk, but I'm okay talking here. I summoned the guard. This lady is disturbing me. I have not yet had my court date. I didn't want to talk to her and keep her away from me later, I explained. Denise was led away by a guard. You going to regret this. She yelled. She kept yelling as they led her away from the jail. The next day, my favorite guard was back. The cell I was in now had a few small-time criminals. We were talking to pass the time when the guard approached. A lady has come to see you, he told me. I've already stated that I don't want to see my unpleasant wife, I snapped. It's not her, he explained. It is someone else. Do you want to go to the room or should she come here? Bring her here. It's faster, I remarked as she strolled down the row of prison cells, ignoring the din of whistles and cries. She possessed the grace of a princess. You definitely shook my brother up, she explained, and Denise. Oh, she's mad. What did Stuart do? I told her the story, and her eyes widened even more than Stuart's before my fist hit him. Oh no, I'm so sorry, she gasped. I can't get my head around this. My brother's college days are done. How does that relate to school? I wondered. The dean can't stand Stuart, she explained. He has been on thin ice since returning to school. The dean warned him that even a minor slip would result in his permanent removal. It appears that he is now permanently confined to his home. My father is at wit's end. Stuart, a grown man, still lives in the basement. Could you picture it? They tiptoe around him simply to do laundry. His room is a shrine to Lord of the Rings, and he brings his loser friends down for Dungeons and Dragons. I couldn't help but chuckle. She then stated she was here to help me out. Why? I quizzed. Because that is the purpose of friendship. She spoke, her cheeks turning pink. EMC. But you don't have that much cash, I pointed out. She admitted, it's my college fund. EMC, I will let the guards take my bank card, I told her. I am very touched. But I can't accept your money. Nonetheless, it has enormous significance, thanks. She only responded with a smile. So you could have left at any point. She was perplexed. I nodded. So why stay? She pressed. 3 reasons, I began. Denise wanted me to be free, but she remained confused, believing it was her fault. She can't speak to me while I'm here, second comma. I needed a place to stay here. I don't pay for meals and stay till you show up. I didn't see any reason to leave. She grinned at me again and went out with the guard to arrange my release. She returned a little later with the guard. Hey, isn't this the same account that another lady attempted to use to get you out of last night? What is the deal? He asked. I prefer this lady, I replied with a bright smile. Mick drove me to the location where I collected my rental car. We had breakfast together, and I lay everything out for her. Every detail came before. I had simply given her the brief version. But now I've poured out my heart. I expressed my feelings. How I discovered the truth and everything that followed. She, too, told me what happened while I was locked up. Denise had spoken with Stuart several times and was now represented by a lawyer. She replaced her first lawyer with a harder one, a one recognized for achieving significant results for his clients. Denise intended to either force me to take her back or ruin me if she couldn't quote to Mick embraced me, claiming she would do anything to help me. I hugged her back, telling her that her presence was the best support I could ask for. I then returned to my home to retrieve some items from the garage. I realized I couldn't get into the home without forcing my way in, but fortunately I only needed items from the garage. Just then, Denise and a man emerged from a car. She marched up to me, rage in her eyes. Why did you accept help from a lady but not from me? I wondered if this rage had always been in the woman I married. I smiled and introduced myself to the man next her, who turned out to be her lawyer. He was kind and professional. Please answer me, Denise yelled. The conversation with Denise and her lawyer, which was fraught with tension and disclosed emotions, represented a watershed point. It demonstrated the deep divisions and the extent she was willing to take to confront me. Armed with legal help and determined to either reconcile firmly or inflict damage, this moment, exacerbated by emotional upheaval, underlined the nuances of our strained relationship and the impending legal struggle. Who bailed you out? Was that one of the girls you'd been hiding with? Denise yelled at me. Our calm street was now alive, with neighbors peering through windows. Her angry statements may easily land us in trouble. I knew it, but I opted to ignore her. Concentrate on the lawyer. Sorry, I can't let you in the house right now, I told him, but I'll make sure Denise can pick up her belongings soon. He nodded, astonished by my composure. That's extremely considerate of you. Denise was still on fire and demanded answers. Our lives were not always filled with battles and cries, but that changed. Planning to serve me? Divorce paperwork, I asked the lawyer. He was curious about my living condition. I sold my house. I emphasized that it was mine alone and that we were not a true family. It didn't make sense to keep it. Denise's tears spilled and the lawyer was stunned. He urged her as she broke down. Could you at least respond to her, Denise? I began. Missy was the one who helped me out. The funds came from our account. There is no other woman, for the past 10 years. It's just you. I adored you till you messed up. Her tears never stopped, but her optimism did. We can still repair it, she whispered. But I shook my head. No, Denise, it is over. You succumbed to your desire to win. Take over. We can't go back. I could not get over what I had witnessed. I am trusting you again. Impossible. Are you sure? Denise's voice was gentle. It's possible that you're hurt or angry. Give it time. You might have a new perspective on things. Don't think so, Denise, I said. She urged them to talk things out. Let us sit. Figure things out, like grown-ups. I was open to seeing that park. 1 p.m., I stated. The park. I mentioned that she was concerned about the possibility of voices being raised. It's also more convenient to leave if necessary. She hoped we might reconcile. See you soon, she said. I turned, drove to my rental car, and called my boss to update him. Don't be duped, he cautioned her lawyer. And some people have been asking you about your income and retirement funds. Stick to the plan. In addition, you have the opportunity to visit Vegas today. If she files first, our tricks may be reviewed next. I met with my lawyer and handed him information about Denise's lawyer. He couldn't stop laughing as I explained my plan of action. He seems to have been down this road before. You do realize I have to tell the court everything you've told me, right? He said. I just nodded. Didn't care. My only concern was the children's well-being. I like tuna, he joked, implying forgetfulness. Guess what you said will also slip my mind. I drove to the park. Denise was present on the bandstand bench. There are people around, but they are far enough away. I sat across from her. She appeared sad. It seems like years ago that you'd come up to me in the kitchen and we'd joke about. Now it's as if you believe I'll make you sick. She paused. The eyes were on me, and then they moved on. Perry, everything has gone wrong. I do not feel like the same person. I've been with you during this period. I sincerely apologize for my role. Looking back, I see how silly I was. I tried to blame you at first. I convinced myself it was your fault because of that ridiculous game. I bought the game in the hopes that it would bring us closer. Denise, I loved you so much. I had to try everything to bring us back. Now I see it, she explained. But you are missing everything. Perry, you have good looks. I'm lucky to be with you. It wasn't like this at first. Remember 10 years ago when we got together? Every time we went out, I was the one who caught people's attention. People would wonder why that beautiful woman was with you. You had no idea, but males would always try to grab my attention while you were not present. You'd leave, and guys would hand me their phone numbers or approach me right next to you. But I never pursued it. My thoughts would never leave us. By then, I'd had enough of guys who only wanted a brief time because I looked good. I could have had it any day. That is all I heard from the older waitresses I worked with. They used to be it. Then one day they were not. They only had a small space with a cat. I did not want that life. I noticed that other women seemed happier. They had homes and loved ones, children and husbands who loved them back. I noticed that what distinguished happy women from those who felt unwanted was love. I thought about all the guys we used to hang out with and realized that, while I had been close to many of them, they didn't actually care about me. There's a big difference between wanting someone for the night and actually caring for them. Perry, you were the only one who genuinely cared about me. That is why I was attracted to you, and I'm grateful for that. But now things have changed. Perry, you've become more gorgeous over time. Me? My body changed, and I became a mother. I still picture myself as the youthful, lovely girl I once was. I recently felt invisible. However, many women notice how attractive you are. It struck me hard approximately 3 months ago during a joyful function at the mosque. It occurred to me at that point how independent you had become. You have not changed, Perry. You're still the sweet and humorous person you've always been, but I guess I was looking for something greater. That's why I began to boss you about and distanced myself from you. I wanted to convince myself that I didn't need you. Meanwhile, you went above and above to provide for us and our children, trying to keep me from drifting away. The video game concept was excellent. It could have been wonderful for us, but I spoiled it. You showed me how much you still desired me, based on what you hoped to win. You made being with me feel like a treasure. While I saw it as a tactic to insult you. And until the other day, I assumed it was just you attempting to manipulate me. When you shared your honest feelings, I just wanted to cry when I realized how incorrect I had been. I didn't realize how much you loved me. That thing with Stuart, it harmed you, Perry. I know I didn't intend for it to happen like that. I wanted to win that game against you so badly. I wanted to have something to brag about. You know, when Stuart and I played the games alone, things went out of control, I suppose. We started by talking about the bet. Then he asked about the stakes. Before I knew it, he was stating that because he helped me avoid defeat, he deserved a share of the victory. The first time I won. Perry, you made me feel absolutely great. You've been nice to me before, but that night was something different. I should have realized it wasn't such a huge deal to you when you didn't want to go all the way after. I assumed you were just reserving your strength for your big run the next day. The morning after, I had to keep a promise to Stu for his assistance, and after winning against you, I was much more determined to win again. Stewart then stated that it would be more difficult, but he was well aware of this. However, he did tell me his price. He wanted more from me. I shouted no. I was not going to let him close again. But as the days passed, I realized I couldn't win. You were too good at solving riddles. I hated losing, so I gave in. Aside from the shame, it was something I could attempt to ignore. Stewart's main plan was to cheat. I observed how you solved puzzles when you were struggling. I didn't because, unlike you, I wasn't forced to battle. If you were shot, it was game over. But I could not be killed. I possessed a hack code that made me invincible, allowing me to be shot multiple times and still survive. Stewart informed me what I needed to do to win and what he expected in return. I didn't realize how much it would hurt us to agree to it. Stewart indicated it would be a close call, and it was. I quote, "Am very sorry, Perry. I got so caught up in wanting to win that I forgot about how it would affect us. I wish I could take everything back. After you complete the final game challenge, I watched, then used a cheat code to skip a puzzle and catch up with you exactly at the end. I blazed through the final fight, shooting left and right, while you hid and moved slowly. You were present when I won and collected my prize. Even in the face of loss, he maintains a good attitude. It reminded me how much I wished we could be close again. Exactly like before our children arrived. But after you tried to be near, you didn't want any more. I did. I missed us. Then on Monday, you took me off guard. It felt like we were in a game, not in real life. Perry, the hurt I caused you is not worth losing what we had. We should think about how to go past this. What can I do to make matters right? I only wanted what we had. That is now gone. Your appearance did not matter. From the beginning, everything revolved around us. But once I saw you with Stewart, it was over. It's not about the actual items. I fell for the one who looked after me when no one else did. You threw it away. Now we need to worry about the children, how to manage custody and well-being. Perry, that is not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to know how he could help us. I do not want to hear this. You need to come up with a solution. She became upset. Her voice grew louder. Denise, I'm sorry, but I can't. Yelling will not help. Trust is broken. We can't get it back. We need to move forward as parents for our children. Perhaps one day we might be friends when this hurts less. Parents. She yelled. She rose from the bench and gave me a stern look. Pals, I do not want to be your mate. You have 2 days to figure yourself out. Then it's wartime. Push me, and I will take everything you have. Your entire cash balance, everything is in the bank, the house, even a modest automobile. She was so loud and yelled so many foul words that everyone around us couldn't help but stare. Perry, you're going to have a rough time in 2 days. Either come back to me or lose everything in the divorce. You will wind up on a cold floor eating canned salmon, working hard for me. She's gnarled. And I might be with Stewart or someone. I'm doing this to get back at you, not because I want to. And when you're elderly, I'll grab most of your pension, leaving you with nothing. I get it. And Perry, if I find out you're with another lady, I'll ruin you. Then she pushed over the bench and dashed for her car. I traveled to Las Vegas that day. I stayed in a great hotel and even played a few games. The following morning, someone knocked on my door. As soon as I opened the door, he entered. He handed me a file. There were hotel documents within. They showed that I lost almost $200,000. Where did I obtain the money? I asked. He simply smiled and remarked, You sold your home and your future money, he said. Then you lost everything here. Your employer, Justin, is my cousin. He lost a lot to his wife. He set it up. I was delighted I spent an additional day in Vegas. I saw a show with 8 lots. He even smiled at several lovely ladies. I wasn't ready to date yet, but I knew I wanted to someday. But I needed to face the music soon. The morning after Vegas, I went to thank Justin at work. My father was bringing the kids back later. Denise hadn't asked about them once, which made me wonder about my automobile. I noticed Denise's lawyer enter the parking lot, followed by another man and Denise. So, are we heading home? She hoped. I simply smiled and shook my head. She seems about to erupt with rage. The man with Denise gave me a folder. You've been served, he explained. The lawyer appeared apologetic as he spoke. This is not the ideal approach, he confessed. Your wife persisted. Perhaps bring your lawyer to speak calmly, determine a reasonable split. Denise was bitter. I warned you, Perry. She spit. Are you ready to be smart? I can conclude this. But remember, you have a court date for the assault. You might end up in jail. I can also solve that." She seemed smug, believing she had me trapped. She stated, "I'll be back home soon." It all felt like a bad dream. I needed to get everything sorted out quickly for the sake of the kids. They required a secure home for school. That additional day in Vegas felt like a lifetime ago. Now I had to cope with the mess. Denise was playing hardball, but I had to maintain my composure for everyone's sake. That day I met with Denise and our lawyers. I did the majority of the chatting. Other people were also present. Denise had Stuart and his friend with her, whilst I had one of Justin's friends. Stuart felt nervous when he noticed my pal about to fold. Denise sat and inquired. "Let us start," I responded. "We say divorce because you were mean-spirited," her lawyer began. I just chuckled and everyone turned to stare at me, and my lawyer "What quote S so funny?" Denise's lawyer inquired. "Just a little while ago. Your client wanted to stay with me." I said, "That doesn't sound like I was mean, right?" "Denise." His face tightened. "Okay," I went on. "Denise, I assumed we'd go with. We cannot agree on anything. I was fine with that. To avoid embarrassing anyone or dragging Stuart through the mud. But if you're going to attack with nonsense, I'll counter with the truth. I am alleging you cheated," I informed them. Denise's lawyer was astonished, then stared at her. "You didn't say what?" I pointed out. He was at a loss for words. "This is a place where blame does not stick without evidence, correct? Do you have any?" he asked. I displayed the video from the nanny cam on my iPhone. He looked away, then back at Denise. "I need to speak with my client," he murmured, and they left. Outside, loud arguing could be heard. I smirked at Stuart, who was sweating when Denise and her lawyer returned. He indicated they'd go with, "Can't agree on anything." I'm not sure I want that now, after the hurt she inflicted. Maybe we should all know what she's like, but let's wait for now. Continue telling me what she wants. My wife prefers to house the children most of the time, support for them and her car, and more than half of our money, even my retirement savings. She also suggests we talk to someone about our problems. I couldn't help but laugh again. The lawyer just stared. What happens now? He inquired about finding your love with someone, just flips everything. It makes you lose it for a while. All I wanted was to terminate things and move on. So no, not happening. What? Denise stood up angry. What have you done? I sold my house. I said I did it before she asked for a divorce. In addition, I seized all of our savings. I thought I'd travel to Vegas, cultivate it, and then we could split it clean. You find someone who accepts your cheating while I find someone who supports me. But didn't you make any more? She asked. Not even close, I confess. Never gamble. Mad. How much have you lost? Her attorney chimed in. Everything, I confessed. I still owe the casino a lot. And your retirement funds. The lawyer didn't give up. Surely she received some. Wasn't there long enough to make it worthwhile? And after what happened, I quit or was dismissed. So it's almost gone too. I sold my automobile to start paying back the casino. We now only have her automobile, which we still owe money on. No work, no home. I'm not sure how we'll manage. Denise failed to ask about the kids, who are now with my parents. You idiot! She yelled. So here we are. I have nothing except difficulties and debt. She's furious, and I'm not sure how we'll get by with what we have. And the children are stuck in the center of this turmoil. We need to start from scratch. What I did was foolish, but this is considerably worse. So you're going to see a counselor to fix your marriage? Her lawyer inquired, hoping to make one valid argument. No, I replied. Denise sat there, arms tightly crossed across her chest. What should I do now? She asked. Are you going to fight me for our children? I said. Why? She asked. Why can't we simply make up? We botched up. No, Denise, you botched up. I said I was just reacting to what you did. Then she started crying and shouting at me. Even if I wind myself in jail, I will be unable to find work. I'll drop it if you agree to try and save our marriage. I said, forget it, she said. I said, I'm not worried. Stuart is in deeper difficulty than I am, and I have more control over what happens to him than you have. The man I brought with me is the principal of Stuart's college. He is bored up with Stuart's bullshit, yet he owes me a favor. If Stuart does not drop his charges, he will be booted out. In other words, he wasted his parents' money and will never be able to attend college again. But she told me too. Stuart spoke suddenly. I only wanted to drop the charges and move on, but she threatened me that if I didn't, she would accuse me of assaulting her. We discussed it for 2 days. In the end, Stu dropped his charges, Denise, and I chose to separate owing to our significant differences, and we both found employment and figured out how to spend time with our children. We each took our places with what was left in our bank, then closed it and kept our money separate. We calculated exactly how much the lads required, and each paid half. Denise landed a job waiting tables. It was difficult for her. She hadn't worked for 10 years, and it showed. I even pretended to care when she complained about working every day for a few months. Everything was looking up. One morning, I called her to inform her that the lady who bought my house was selling it again. I intended to try to get another loan to buy back my house. I was surprised to see her cry when I told her. "I apologize, Denise," I said. "This will be beneficial for the boys. They'll get their old rooms back, and you'll be able to visit them as often as you want. They can still stay with you half of the time, but I believe it is preferable for them to have a home with a yard and pets to play with, right?" "It is not that," she said. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I found out yesterday that I'm going to have a baby." I was stunned. "Denise, I understand how difficult this situation is. I explained that we'd just work a little harder and care for 3 kids instead of 2 while we were together." "This is good news. You don't understand," she said. "The timing is off. More than anything, I wish this was your baby. But it isn't." She felt like her life was finished. "Did you tell Stuart?" I asked. She intended to inform him that day. But Perry does not need to know. Nobody does. "Can't we?" "Denise," I asked. "It's not correct. We've heard enough lies. Look where it has brought us, "But I do not want to be with him, Perry," she explained. "I want to be with you." "That is simply not possible now," I told her. "Who knew a year ago that we'd be here or that you'd be carrying someone else's child?" "But here we are. It's all because of the video game system," she explained. "Video games ruined my life." "No, love," I answered softly. "It wasn't the games that ruined both of our lives, but our lack of caution. Things became both better and worse. My summer renters left and I regained possession of my home. Denise informed Stuart about the baby. He denied it was his and hired a lawyer. I promised Denise that I'd help her with the baby. It was time for us to prove who the father was. Denise became too tired to look after the children, so they moved in with me, as the baby grew. She still came to see them frequently. I convinced Mick, who was constantly close, to live with us and help out. She adjusted her school schedule to accommodate the children so that she could be present for them. Denise lost her work since moving quickly proved too difficult for her while she was pregnant. Stuart let Jessica stay in his basement, but only because his parents pressed him. They were thrilled about the baby. Stuart and Denise continued to fight, but things were different with Mick. She did much more than merely watch over the kids. She also cared after me. She cooked and cleaned while we spent a lot of time together. One day, I discovered Mick had relocated a game setup to the garage. For movie evenings, we set up our living room with only a TV and a sofa. Mick claimed it was better this way, more comfortable for all of us. She also prepared a surprise movie for later. She understood how the game stuff made me sad and said it was time to let go. Mick donned one of my huge shirts over her swimwear, preparing for a pool and movie night. She taught me that it's good to move on from the past and embrace what we have. I got a breath of her scent that night. It had been months since that occurred. I let go of some of my rage over what Denise done. That evening was just perfect. We had a family night, something we hadn't done in a very long time. Denise has been drifting away from me and the boys, and I've been doing everything I can to win her back. The boys took their seats on the couch with their popcorn, leaving only the little sofa for AMC and I. We ended up very close together, which felt fantastic. She wrapped one arm over me, placed her head on my shoulder, and sighed. Like most guys, I definitely enjoyed the prospect of cuddling on the couch with an attractive, attentive woman. Meanwhile, I kept missing my adulterous wife, who had gained weight. Yes, that was me being snarky. To be honest, we didn't kiss or anything, but simply sitting close with our arms interlocked felt amazing, and I barely watched the movie as summer faded into October. And with AMC and the kids back at school, Denise was hardly seen unless we went to see her and her new family. This pregnancy seemed to be more difficult for Denise, and she frequently blamed it on my absence, but she also blamed it on Stuart's lack of effort. She kept asking, "Why am I a 36-year-old pregnant lady sleeping in a basement? I have nothing." Denise became angrier and rougher as the days passed. The loving woman I once knew had disappeared, Ms. And Stuart's family frequently said she was only sharp-tongued because she was carrying. But I had reservations. I believe I had been so focused on keeping Denise happy in the past that she had no reason to be bitter. Standing firm and refusing to back down brought out her sharper side. Denise and Stuart were always bickering, making it plain that they couldn't stand each other, each blaming the other for their problems. Denise disliked Stuart because she believed he was the reason her marriage and fancy life had ended. Stuart felt that Denise had taken away his opportunity to hang out with his geeky buddies and play Dungeons and Dragons in the basement. Stuart's parents had become tired of constantly assisting him. His father began encouraging Stuart to be friendlier to Denise, stating that if it weren't for the kid, they would have kicked him out. Stuart, quote, "S parents likewise treated my children like their own grandchildren." It was normal for me to bring Mick and the kids over to meet Denise, and the kids would run to him and his wife for hugs and treats. They were starting to see us as a family, which made Mick flush every time they gave us a knowing glance. One day, we were all sitting on the back porch, chatting about things that made Mick uncomfortable. Her father, trying to break the ice, asked, "So, Mary Claire, does he know about the baby?" She gently responded, "Yes, Dad. Perry knows I am unable to bear children. He is okay with it." Her father grinned. "So, when will you two marry?" Mick blushed and looked aside. Before she could reply we weren't formally dating, she joked about holding my hand so I didn't get lost on the large porch. Her father played along, pointing out that no one had ever gotten lost there before. We laughed, but Mick and I refused to let go of each other's hands. Her father then claimed he'd had enough. "Mick, you're 25, have an associate's degree, and are on your way to a bachelor's. You have a job and your own place. You don't stay inside anymore. Whether you realize it or not. You have a family and a man who deeply loves you." "Perry, don't play dumb. I saw the glance you two shared. I don't want to get into it. I'm proud of you, Mary Claire," he added, gently touching her face. "But I want to feel the same way about your sibling. He quote, S32, and still acts like he's much younger. He's been in school for nearly 10 years and I can't keep up with him anymore. I'm done with it, and I need your support. Could you please allow me to rent out your home to your brother and Dennis because you are rarely home? I can't bear the thought of my grandchild in a basement. Perry, you're practically family, thus you're his brother-in-law. Could you get him a job where you work? Even the simplest task is preferable to none. He's been in school forever. He must have learned something useful by now." That's when a very pregnant Denise walked out, paper in hand, cursing at the guy. She was loud and upset. I watched Mick hurry to the kids, attempting to hide them from the swearing. She informed Denise that the children should not hear such remarks. Denise just broke down and dropped the paper mix. Denise's parent tried to calm her down. I grabbed the note, read it, and was stunned. I recommended he take the children inside for a drink. They were promised cola, and their features brightened as the kids left. I read the note aloud. "Denise, I am done. I can't do it anymore. I wished I had never met you. You are nothing but problems. You have ruined up my life. I'm not sure why Perry is frightened of losing you. I did him a tremendous favor. That is how I see it. And look," he swiftly went on to my sister, "she has always liked him, you know, Dot? Remember her party? Yeah, she was a little tipsy, but she was spewing genuine sentiments. Mary Claire is now living her ideal life with the man she's always desired. They were yours once. She's up in the clouds, happy. Me? I am locked in a nightmare. My folks, no! Help! They just pushed you down into the basement with me. They didn't even ask if I was comfortable with it. They, quote, re-attempting to transform us into some sort of phony marriage. And I can't see why this isn't the life I desired. I don't want a child. I don't want to be a father. I do not desire a wife. And I definitely don't want you. You are not my type at all. You're overweight, you're not attractive, and, as I've previously stated, you're mean if you possess nice characteristics. I have not seen them. It would make no difference whether you had any positive qualities. Because let's be honest, Perry is a gorgeous man, the kind that makes a good father. He does a terrific job. He sincerely loved you. You were his wife for 10 years and he worked tirelessly for you, but you continued to cheat on him. How could I possibly trust you? I don't think the baby is mine. I joke that aliens must have utilized my DNA in an experiment. I also do not intend to work myself to death like Perry or my father did. I'm not that kind of worker. I will not break my back laboring to care for you and your children because of one night of blunders. C, comma. I learned something in college. So, with a lighter heart, I'm departing for a better place. Do not try to find me. I won't be any place. You look at my father and say he can relax now. I am out of his basement. So there you have it, my story. It's mine, despite its difficulty and twists and turns, a story about desiring more and seeking. What's better out there than what's been given to me? It is about breaking free, even if it means abandoning what was previously deemed home. So there I was, finishing my note, when Denise began to cry heavily. MLK claims her parents attempted to console her by assuring her that everything will be fine. She did not believe them. When you do something wrong, life has a way of catching up with you. But I have to admit that everything came out fine in the end. Despite the lies and tricks, a few bad things happened, but we overcame them. So glancing at the two people in front of me, I asked if they wanted to buy this game machine or not. The lady appeared to think twice about it. The guy began nodding. Yes. Just then, a woman emerged from the house with two small sons. "Mommy, may we go in the pool?" my son Johnny asked. She picked him up, kissed him, and said, "You'll have to wait a bit, Johnny." "You? Only 8. The boy called her Mama. "Did you and your wife reconcile?" the lady inquired. "She doesn't appear fat. Did she go on a crazy diet before I could respond?" An old beat-up car pulled in. It looked like it was about to fall apart. A huge woman emerged, followed by an even larger man wearing massive glasses. They both gazed at the game machine. I married him. I told the couple I was speaking with that the woman getting out of the rattle trap is Denise. I wondered what was bothering her now. Denise ran around the yard until she discovered a baseball bat. She then pulled out some cash and handed it over. "Here's $50, she said loudly, claiming the game machine. Mick nodded in agreement, but Stuart yelled out in shock. The scene was full of emotions, from moments of reconciliation to the unexpected turn of seeing Denise act out once more. What a day it was, full of unexpected events and the strange sensation of everything falling into place. "Go to hell, Stuart, it's mine now!" Denise yelled angrily. She lifted the bat and smashed it into the gaming console again and again, until it was nothing but bits and pieces. Denise cackled like a witch as she crushed the high-tech gaming system to bits. "All for what? For you?" she yelled as she bashed it one more. "So, you'll have to find a new toy," I said, attempting to smile. "Looks like the game is over." "Wait," the lady said. "You wound up with him." We sat back down, and I told them everything. The following few months were wild. Nothing like we expected. Denise had a baby, a girl that looks remarkably like Stuart. Tests revealed that he was really the father. She's still in the basement with her girlfriend. But they're not alone. Stuart was crying over the phone to his parents about a month after the kid was born, begging for help. He didn't have any money, not even 100 miles from home. Got caught attempting to steal food. Things became worse when the cops arrived. Stuart attempted to flee and accidentally pushed a deputy over. Even though it was a mistake, it is still a major issue. My parents had to pay a lot of money to bail him out. Stuart, Denise, and little Betty are now locked in the basement. Not really happy. Denise doesn't spend much time with our kids. They're terrified of her. They started calling him Sea Mommy shortly after we married. Jail made everything more difficult. Stuart now has a record, making it difficult to obtain job. Denise keeps a careful eye on him. His parents pressured him to marry so that he could give the child his last name. They, quote, constantly arguing. Things were starting to look better for them. Denise finally got a new job as a waitress. It didn't pay well, just the minimum. However, the majority of waitresses earned a lot of money from tips. Unfortunately for Denise, however, she didn't get much more money because she wasn't particularly kind. She used the money to buy Stuart a modest push lawn mower. He started mowing the lawns in their area. Sure, it was difficult with all the other kids doing the same. Stuart, on the other hand, had some sales experience dating back to his college days. He was thinking about shoveling snow when winter arrived and maybe raking leaves in the fall. Mick walked by, brought me more cola, kissed me briefly, and returned to the kids. So things improved for you? The guy inquired. I nodded. Purchasing the game system was the finest decision I did. I said... Just then, Denise's automobile died. She stopped destroying what was left of the game system and attempted to start the automobile. It would not budge. She simply hit it and began to cry. Denise and Stuart's lives appeared to be becoming brighter. Denise had gotten a new job serving tables. The base wage was not particularly high, but tips might quickly mount up. Unfortunately, Denise, his attitude did not win over many people, thus her tip jar remained low. She was able to acquire Stuart a manual mower with it. He became the neighborhood lawn care expert. He had plenty of competition from the neighborhood youngsters, of course. Stuart, on the other hand, had a secret weapon, his collegiate marketing courses. He was already planning to offer snow shoveling in the winter and leaf raking in the fall. Then Mick stopped by with another drink for me. I stole a kiss and ran back to the children. Has everything worked out for you? The man inquired with a nod. I responded. Getting the gaming console was definitely the smartest move I've ever made. Denise's automobile coughed one last time and stalled. Frustrated, she stopped destroying what remained of the gaming equipment and attempted to restart her automobile. No luck bashing on the dashboard. She broke down in tears. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on